right, it is 7 o'clock. Let's call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make motion to approve the agenda.
Second to the motion?
We have a motion by Councilmember Henry and a second by Councilmember Sayre. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Let's see. Community comments. So if anybody has any comments, questions, concerns, etc., for anything that is not on tonight's agenda, this is the point in the meeting where you are invited to come up front and speak to us. Going twice? Okay. Moving on. Presentations and reports. Carver Ridge. Come on up, ladies. Yeah, if you just, there are 2 chairs there, so if you just want to sit down, make yourselves at home.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. How's it going?
It's good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. So I'm Andrea, and this is Kelly. I'm the executive director, and Kelly's our marketing director. We wanted to come and, introduce ourselves. I've met Courtney and Vicki I've met. We have 3 sort of programs. So we have Independent Plus, Memory Care, and Assisted. We're right down the road. We are trying to hire local. I live in Carver. She's in Chaska. If you know of anybody who's looking for a job, I would love for them to reach out to me. It's kind of hard to find people who want to do home health care, that kind of job. We do have some business offices available. We're looking for nurses, assistant, the receptionist.
And community life.
Yeah. So
I saw that you had posted that on Carver Life.
Yes.
And then, I did see it, and that's great. And then somebody commented that they went to click and go to it, and it wasn't posted wherever they were looking.
I think that they contacted me, but it's on Indeed.
Okay, it is. Okay.
Yep. And then, do you have any questions? Anything we can help answer?
First move-in still in February?
February 1st, yep.
Okay.
We're trying to space out the move-ins. We don't want it to be chaotic, so we're aiming more towards 2 a day. We have 70 units. 21 of that is memory care.
How many units are spoken for already?
We have roughly 20, I think.
Okay.
We wanted to have 9 by February 1st, so we're really, it's coming along.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. I'd shared with the council in December there was the Sip and See event where they were giving tours, and it's looking really nice in there. And I understand you have more furniture and.
Oh, the furniture's in. It looks so totally different than before. We are doing like a sneak peek before the official opening. That's going to be next Thursday from 2:30 to 4:30.
Are you there on a daily basis at this point?
Yeah,
so
we're
if we want to
finally
stop
in. Yes,
Okay.
anytime. We're usually there by 8 o'clock is when we're there until 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then just a suggestion, maybe if you were to repost and some of those specific jobs that you mentioned.
That's a
we have
great
some of that
suggestion.
up there.
Yep, I'll do that tonight.
Sounds great.
Everything looking good?
Yeah, it's a very beautiful facility. We're really lucky to work there, and I'm super excited. It's close to home, close to for Kelly.
Yeah,
Our
it's
director.
beautiful.
Is it just punch list stuff you have left?
Yes, I walked the building today. I just have one more wing left to do with construction.
It looks good.
Yes.
It's gorgeous.
From the outside.
Yeah,
I'll have to
come
go
on
check
in.
it out.
I have candy, kisses, stop over.
That's the
Everybody.
problem.
You're going to turning them away.
On the door tonight.
She's already had half of them, so you better hurry.
Seriously, today.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you have or do you plan to have transportation for residents?
So we are going to have a bus. It'll be wrapped. It'll say Carver Ridge. I don't know if you've seen the Chaska one. We have Chaska Heights. It's like our sister building, so that's over there. That's just scheduled transportation. So it's, grocery shopping, Target runs. It's anywhere around the area. We have been talking to Harvey's about doing like a senior lunch, like maybe once a month, that kind of stuff, just getting them out in the community. Yeah.
Any other questions? Great.
Perfect. I'll
Thank
leave
you, guys.
some of these up here. if
Great.
anyone wants to take them.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
All right, moving on to 5.2, Southwest Transit. Mr. Jacobson, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mayor. and council members as well. Thanks for the opportunity to bring forward some issues that are critical to Southwest Transit's future. Can you hear me all right? There we go. And we intend to make the focal point of the 2020 legislature. Now, I'm sure you've all had or seen what we're looking or trying to do here. What I'm going to do today is just basically go through it or try to go hit the high points of it. And of these 5, we've already gone to the cities of Eden Prairie, Chanhassen, and Chaska. We are asking tonight for your support, a resolution of support. We've got some numbers in here. I hope I don't dizzy you, but we'll try to keep those short and easy. Our first point is our general fund. Is to replace the $500,000 in annual state general fund that our good friends at the Met Council decided not to provide to Southwest Transit or to any of our other suburban transit systems for the 2020 biennium. The other transit systems are Minnesota Valley, which is Shakopee and south of the river, City of Plymouth, and City of Maple Grove. This makes up about 5% of our annual state revenue. And when added to the projected decline in our other major state revenue, the motor vehicle sales tax, otherwise known as MVEST, acronyms and numbers, it's the way it, anyway. Southwest is looking at a projected overall decrease of almost 10% in its available state funding in each of the next 2 years for the biennium. Our second point is an equitable split of this MVEST. Southwest is also asking the legislature to reevaluate the distribution of motor vehicle sales tax funding to find a more equitable distribution. This is one of my favorite taxes of all times. It used to be on the property tax, but back in 2002, in the wisdom of the legislature, they decided to have people buy a car, save a bus. So the 6% you pay on when you buy a car goes into the pool to support. That's your Minnesota vehicle sales tax. Now what has occurred, and so this pool of money is shrinking each year, and it's since 2002. In the last 5 years, well, when it first started, it was like 83% went to Metro Transit and the Metropolitan Council's transportation service, and 17% went to the suburban transit providers. And, almost 18 years later, in the last 5 years, actually, 94% of the additional funding has gone to Metro Transit, and only 6% has gone to the suburban operators. And in the past 2 years, it's even gotten smaller. 97.5% went to Metro Transit and the Met Council, and 2.5% went to the opt-out providers, or suburban providers. Opt-out, that's old legislation. Suburban providers. Our third piece is our vehicle and facility funding. As you may be aware, the Metropolitan Council's levies transit tax within the transit taxing district, City of Carver, and that tax helps replace vehicles and various capital items. But Carver is not within that transit taxing district. You're just Chaska is, you're not. So far, so good. While we've accessed some of this funding for replacement vehicles, it does not provide funding for all of our vehicle needs, nor does it provide funding to expand our facilities to keep them in a state of good repair. That's the new federal buzz, to keep things going and prolonging your capital investments. When you add this to not having suburban providers included in the $50 million bonding package this year, the Met Council, we asked or approached the Met Council to be part of that bonding, and for whatever reason, it didn't work out, or they didn't accept our bonding request. Now they have the Transportation Advisory Board, the TAB, for those, rewrite some rules for the federal solicitation funding, which we used to call it the Congestion Mitigation Air Quality. That was a solicitation that occurred every 2 years. And out of that pot, this coming up was $44 million. They've taken off the top for ABRT, the governor's pet project, $25 million. So that has reduced the pool significantly for us to try to expand and do other things that we'd like to do. Now, to keep pace, we've done other things kind of creatively. We've issued debt. That's always a positive one for public entities. But we do that though when we get favorable rates. We've used funding that we've had various real estate deals throughout our service area, the buying and selling of various real estate properties. And we've been able to put together a development fund, but that's slowly dwindling. And we've also used some operating funds to meet our capital needs. So as we can see, the trend line, excuse me, the trend line's not going the way it should be. Excuse me. Fourth piece is our regional technology. This is the technology that they put on our buses, for example. Wi-Fi is a good example. We also have things like station transponders. Those are those arms like on 46th Street Station on 35W as you head into downtown. It's a little remote control that raises and lowers the arm. Fare payment validators, fancy term for a little thing you put your go-to card on. Fare boxes, this is another one of my favorites. It's still running on a DOS-based system, but the region continues to use this. And dead reckoning capabilities downtown, ticket vending machines. We've tried to get a ticket vending machine forever. And now that Southwest Station is part of the Met Council and the first or last stop, depending on how you look at it, we'll have 7 of them. So it's all about balance, you know. And the last thing, we want to look for exemption from fare policies. Special event fares are the big one. Last year at the state fair, we charged $6 per individual plus a $2 donation for parking, which riled people up to no end. Well, how come you're charging us for parking and blah, blah, blah. The 2 previous years, we charged people $8 for adults. And basically what happened is our good friends of the Met Council identified this as charter service and had to go, and we ended up losing $30,000 on the deal. I mean, our objective when we do these kinds of special events is worst case, pay for them, break even. And who knows, if we make a few extra shekels, we'll figure out what we're going to do with that later. But so we had to go through a process, a Federal Transit Administration process. So this upcoming year, we're going to, even though the Met Council, our attorneys say one thing, their attorneys say another thing, and it's just kind of an interesting outcome at the end. And we lost. So we went through the process, and matter of fact, next Thursday, I'm going to, which isn't that far away now, be presenting to our commission that our FTA and the Met Council has agreed to going back to the old process for next year for fare collection. Let's see what else we got here. Since we operate, there I am. So as we go forward, we're also concerned they will begin to impose their will on our microsystems, our Prime service, our Prime MD services, which are the most productive and least subsidized demand response systems in our region. And because they are set the fare for the region, they are able to do that. They're the Metropolitan Planning Organization. So thanks for your time. I truly hope you can support our initiatives, and hopefully we can get a resolution of support. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dave. Any questions?
Yes. You said in there that the state of Minnesota had like a $49 million budget, and the governor's plan for what was $25 million of it? It's federal money that comes through the state of Minnesota on a a formula basis based on miles and ridership and all that. So it comes to the Metropolitan Planning Organization for distribution. The TAB, which Mayor Mark Winchell from Chaska sits on, and there are other elected officials, have decided to take this $25 million off the top out of the $44 million pot for the biennium, for the solicitation, so Metro Transit / Met Council can put in ABRT projects across the region. Well, Southwest Transit isn't, we run like a BRT, but we're not a BRT. Thus,
that would make us ineligible for that kind of funding. So our pot shrunk considerably there. So that's what that's all about.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Right, so Southwest Transit, we have a resolution of support for that organization in front of us. I would entertain a motion to adopt the resolution.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 102-20, resolution of support for Southwest Transit.
I'll second that.
Great, we have a motion by Councilmember Henry and a second by Councilmember McKnight. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Sorry. Nay.
Sorry, okay.
You want to do a roll call?
vote?
Yep.
Sorry.
I didn't have my microphone on.
Councilmember Henry,
Aye.
Councilmember Mock,
Aye.
Councilmember Sayer,
Nay.
Councilmember McKnight,
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye.
All right.
Great, the
Thank you.
motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobson.
All right, let's see, moving on. We are doing a different format with our packets tonight, so I want to give everybody just a second to kind of transition to the right spot. The next item that we will be discussing, we are at no public hearings, we're at the consent agenda. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Mock and a second by Councilmember Henry. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. No unfinished business. First item under new business is 9.1, the listening session for the franchise fees and street maintenance. Mr. Merrick.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So tonight we're set up to do a listening session on franchise fees and probably more in general street maintenance, kind of introducing franchise fees as a possible source of street maintenance revenue. What we're really looking for tonight is to kind of present kind of what we're dealing with and then hear from residents and other stakeholders that are interested in providing the council with some feedback. The council is not acting tonight. What we're asking you to do is to listen, and then the city attorney, Larry Harris, will be preparing documents that you can consider for scheduling public hearings, et cetera, and then based on what you see from the city attorney and then the feedback that you get tonight, you'll either be voting up or down moving forward with the franchise fee process. And there's some wrinkles to that I'll get into. And so tonight we'll be covering street funding, the different types that we have available to us. A lot of comments related to new residents and impact fees and should new residents pay, so we'll cover that. Get into the specifics of what is a franchise fee. Also get into what a mill and overlay is, and that's kind of a different strategy for the city. In the past, a lot of people have been familiar with the idea of a seal coat where you lay down hot oil and then put kind of a rock mix over that, and really a lot of cities are switching over to a mill and overlay. We'll get into that. What our street program or street maintenance program looks like, what funding options are available to the city to move forward with that, talk about next steps, and then get into the listening session. And that'll work a little bit different than what we're used to. So one of the things that the city agreed to do as part of the kind of the communication and engagement process is if folks couldn't make it tonight, we told them that if they submitted comments that we would read them aloud at the meeting. So what I'll do is I'll read the submitted email comments, but I'll just kind of the way that people communicate. I'm also going to be reading the Facebook comments that the city received via its city website. Then there was quite a bit of content on the Carver Life Facebook page, so I'll be reading through those comments. There are some, just kind of a disclosure, there are some comments that might be irrelevant to the topic at hand, but at the risk of being accused of editing comments, I'm just going to read them all through, and then you can decipher how you want to view those comments. And then after that, the mayor and council, if you're welcome to invite people that are here in attendance to discuss the issue with you. I thought it would be important to just talk about shared expectations. I think, we talk about that here, but I don't think the public, whether it's residents, businesses, or stakeholders, are always in the room when the council and commissions talk about expectations. And so I thought it'd be just good to kind of briefly go over that. that the city is responsible for delivering high quality and cost-effective services, that we maintain buildings and infrastructure, including streets, to ensure the highest level of return for that public investment. And oftentimes that's significant, and so we want to make that infrastructure and those buildings last as long as possible, that we plan for future needs and challenges. We make decisions in the best interest of the entire community, understanding that what might not be good for one neighborhood is maybe better for the entire community, and the pros and cons with that. Being good stewards of public funds, recognizing and being sensitive to the impact that property taxes, fees, and other charges have on residents, businesses, property owners, and all other stakeholders, that it's not an open checkbook. We can't just keep asking for more money, that there are consequences, there are monthly budgets that families and businesses work towards maintaining year in and year out. And that finally we provide a transparent and accessible communication and with meaningful opportunities to advocate for or against matters. And so that's one of the items here is there are, as you'll see later on, there are half a dozen different strategies that the city can employ for looking at street maintenance. And we're hoping that this conversation brings one of those to the top and says, this is what we want to employ moving forward. So looking at street maintenance, the city annually appropriates money to the street maintenance fund via its general fund budget. And so the general fund budget is approximately 80% from property taxes, but it kind of a little wrinkle with that in that is like local government aid, which the city receives about $100,000 from the state, is essentially tax dollars too. It's state money that's coming back to the city, and the state gets its money from taxes. So whether that be sales tax or income tax, et cetera, or if we're talking about franchise fees or local property taxes, 100% of that revenue is coming from the same people. As they're just called different things. So even though we use different things to describe different mechanisms to collect revenue, it's not lost on me, or I don't think anyone with the city, that property taxes or fees and charges are coming from people, and that that's a really important thing to think about when we're talking about additional fees and charges. The 2020 budget, excuse me, has $70,000 allocated to street maintenance, and so that as a kind of a new funding line, the city transfers that money out of the general fund into a special street maintenance fund, so it's contained and used exclusively for that. It's not used for funding salaries. It's used specifically for what it takes to fill potholes, do crack filling, seal coating, mill and overlay work. So 100% of that revenue is used to correct the items that you see in that picture. It's not used to fund someone's salary, et cetera. It's to get the equipment and the materials to do that work. Street maintenance cannot be funded through special assessments to property owners. And one of the things that we went through in the 2019 project and with other street projects is the city needs to show a special benefit to the property, meaning that, and what we do for that is we go through an appraiser, they do a special benefit analysis, and we can't assess more than what that report says is the increased value to that property. And so doing maintenance specifically doesn't increase the value of someone's property to the point where they'd see an increase in property value. So getting into that, so complete reconstruction, and some folks in the community went through this with our 2019 project. The normal life of a street is approximately 30 years, and typically the city will use what's called a 429 bond for funding that road that has been designated for reconstruction. The city is obligated to assess 20% of the project cost to benefiting property owners. If you can't meet that standard, you can't use that tool, or it's subject to a special election. As I mentioned before, the city has to be able to demonstrate that benefit to the property owner, and the city has done that by hiring an appraiser to perform a special benefit analysis. And based on past projects, and it's varied between $8,000 and $9,000, but for the street-only portion of that project, property owners have been paid that just for the street portion. Others, we had a development that had sewer and water, so their assessments were more than that street portion. But then I think the thing that we don't talk about a lot, because it only comes up during the budget, is if that property owner is picking up that 20%, the city, which means all the property taxpayers in the city, the residents and businesses are picking up the other 80%. And so that's still a cost to the entire community, as well as the property owner that's specifically involved. New construction, so the new roads that you might see, so the extension of Levi Griffin Road and Monroe Drive are examples of these, where development projects are required to complete a traffic study that's performed by a traffic engineer. The results of that study determine the need for turn lanes, signals, and other traffic measures. As a part of a new project, the developer pays for those costs associated with the construction for those local roads. But development is only required to make improvements based on impact, not to resolve an underlying need. And I know we have 2 developers in the community that would echo that remark. And we'll get into kind of the nuts and bolts of why that's significant. Before we get into that, I just wanted to kind of point out some other pieces that might be on people's radar. We've been talking a lot about Jonathan Carver Parkway and how that's paid for. That's planned to be improved in 2021 as a part of a joint powers agreement between the city and Carver County. And based on past projects the county has done, the city is expecting to pay 20% of that cost to do that project. The third piece is kind of a little bit tongue-in-cheek, looking at the need to improve Jonathan Carver Parkway. And the example that we've used here on staff is that if you had a paper bag filled with 10 cans of soup and then you added an 11th can and that bag broke, it's not just the 11th can's fault, it's all the other previous 10 cans that contributed to that. And so the need to improve Jonathan Carver Parkway is not the result of the developments that occurred in 2019. For example, I live in Spring Creek, that's been there for 10 years. Everyone in my development uses Jonathan Carver Parkway to get to 212. And so the other thing that is interesting, we had a development project meeting looking at Jonathan Carver Parkway project, and there was a question related to how much of that traffic is from Carver specifically, or how much of it is passed through, and that's why I listed Jordan, Belle Plaine, New Prague, Le Sueur, etc. And there was some estimates, and they're looking at an exact number, but there is estimates anywhere from 80 to 90% of the traffic on Jonathan Carver Parkway is pass-through traffic. And so, and all that kind of sets forth a narrative. I'm going to jump ahead here, but why can't we charge a fee to new residents? And the city attorney will be happy with this slide. There's state statute, and there was a recent case by the city of Woodbury, and essentially is if you're going to charge a fee, it has to be charged for everybody. You can't charge a fee to new residents without showing a correlated cost. And so the nuts and bolts of it are there. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in the Harstead versus City of Woodbury case any more than state statute. If you have specific questions related to that, I'll defer to the city attorney. But the big point is that there's not a mechanism, and I'll leave it to those involved in the discussion to debate whether there should be or not, but there's not a mechanism for the city to legally charge a new resident of however many years we would decide, or a developer to pay kind of a entry fee or membership fee to get into the city. It's the property taxes that they generate go into the pool with all the other property taxes, and that's the city's resource, amongst other things that the city agrees to fund, whether it's street maintenance or fire department or law enforcement services, parks, etc. And so I think that's a real challenge for a community like Carver that is growing, and there are concerns that maybe folks that have lived here, quote unquote, longer, why should they have to pay? But it's a real complex conversation. The reality of it is we can't, and anecdotally, a lot of the streets that we're proposing within the street maintenance program happen to be in the Carver Bluffs, and there haven't been a lot of construction projects that have impacted those streets. Are there streets that have had construction traffic in the last year? Absolutely. But as you can see here, there are some
complex pieces to that, namely, we can't require or impose that type of fee. I will skip back here. One of the things that we do have as a highlight, and again, it's public funds, it's state funds, but when the city reaches a population of 5,000, likely to be official in 2022, the city will be eligible for municipal state aid road funding. The city uses this or gets this number based on an estimate that the Met Council provides based on building inspection reports that the city submits, and we get that number in April. So we're about a year and a half behind. So we're going to be probably right at that number. Hopefully we get over 5,000, but I'm guessing it's going to be just short for this April because it'll only have building permit reports through April of 2019. So we're likely going to be short, meaning that by budget year 22 is when we'd have that municipal state aid road funding, which, as you can see, anywhere from 250 to 275, and these are estimates. Within each city, up to 20% of the local streets and county roads may be designated, but a key piece to this is that could be a funding force for roads like 6th Street West or Mount Hope Road, 4th Street, but we can't use that source of funding for local roads or neighborhood roads, cul-de-sacs, that type of thing. They need to be roads of significance, and we'll have a process that the city engineer will lead us through when we need to designate our state aid road system. But this could be a part of a solution. It won't be the whole thing. We won't be able to rely on this to do all the street maintenance, but maybe a combination of this and a couple other things the community and council might be interested in.
Brent, could you state the names of those streets that may be included in that again, 6th Street and?
It'd be speculation, but
Sure.
at this point, it would be what I consider collectors in the city. So 6th Street West, 4th Street, Mount Hope Road, County Road 40, when the city takes that over at 5,000. So that'd be sections of Old Carver Road, 4th Street East, Broadway, and Main all consist of County Road 40.
For the ones that are on our list that we've identified as maintenance projects right now, is 6th Street the only one that?
I think we have Mount Hope Road on there as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So now kind of getting into what is a franchise fee. So franchise fees are a method of collecting funds from utility companies for the use of the city's right-of-way. Utility companies for the purpose of this topic, because I know there's other companies like telephone, et cetera. But what we're talking about here is electric, gas, and cable television services. And currently those providers in the city are Xcel, Minnesota Valley Electric Cooperative, CenterPoint, Comcast, and Jaguar Communications just started installing services at the end of 2019. Utility companies typically pass along this franchise fee to their users, which are residents and businesses. And so it's very reasonable, and I wouldn't argue with anybody to say that this fee is considered a form of taxation. The city does need to adopt a franchise fee. This is something that was recently discovered for our cable television service providers. We don't have a franchise. Doesn't mean you need to have a fee, but we should have agreements with Comcast and Jaguar. When Jaguar entered the market, their legal department kind of referenced a state statute related to having a franchise agreement. And so I've been working with the city attorney. So once that'll be a process, whether or not you choose to move forward with a franchise fee, we'll want to have franchise agreements with Comcast and Jaguar at a minimum. That doesn't mean you need to include a fee with that. That's not a requirement of an agreement. So getting more specific into a franchise fee, so for gas and electric services, the utility company is typically charged based on the number of connections it has in that community. For example, $5 a month for a gas meter, while cable television is charged a percentage of the provider's gross revenues. So we've talked about 5%. There are some communities that do 3%. And so that can vary. So the average, and I think I referenced this in a later slide, but talked to the Comcast representative last week, their average bill for video service, so it's not internet, just video service, is $75. So it's 5% of that $75, whereas the gas and electric are based on a meter charge. And there's some complexities with that. You might ask, why don't they just all do a percentage, or why don't they just all do a connection? And if you have that question, I'll defer it to Larry Harris, because there's some complexities where I think it was the city of Shakopee wanted to do a percent on gas and electric, and there was some legal wrangling related to how that worked, and I don't know enough about it to talk about it. Franchise fees are fairly common in Minnesota. 357 cities in Minnesota have franchise fees, 101 of them in the 7-county metropolitan area. And you can see the graphic to the right, how our neighboring cities use franchise fees. The city of Chanhassen just recently included gas and electric, and I think Victoria has been within the last 5 years for gas and electric. I think their primary use for that is for burying underground utilities. Chaska uses their revenue for a variety of sources. Now I'm going to show a video here that we're going to queue up. It's fairly elementary, but we just wanted to kind of give a description of what a mill and overlay project is, and I found this video and thought it'd be helpful to the discussion.
You may have heard the words mill and overlay used a lot lately in St. Paul. But what exactly is mill and overlay? We asked Chris Anderson, St. Paul Public Works paving supervisor, for an explanation.
Simply put, mill and overlay is a way of adding life to old pavement. When a street surface deteriorates, it can be rehabilitated through mill and overlay. It begins with the milling or removal of the top layer of asphalt. We remove about 1.5 to 2 inches of the top layer of the old pavement. The old material that is ground off by the milling machine is then recycled into new asphalt. The milled pavement is then swept to remove any loose debris. Next, a tack coat is applied to the newly milled surface. The tack coat helps bond the new layer of asphalt to the existing asphalt. Then the pavement is ready for a fresh layer of asphalt. St. Paul uses a variety of asphalt that is stronger and more resistant to wear than other commercial grades of asphalt. This asphalt is produced at the city's own asphalt plant. The pavement is given a final smoothing with a trio of rollers. The new pavement can then be opened to traffic within 15 minutes of completion. All said and done, the mill and overlay process is done in 2 to 3 days, and the street is set to last for several more years.
One minute here.
If you think of the asphalt like the skin of the street, it's important to keep the skin healthy. Once the skin starts...
Get Rodney Dangerfield pretty soon if you don't.
Just don't start throwing stuff. Thank you, Vicki. So specifically into our street maintenance program, related to a question related to Councilmember Mock. You can see here 6th Street West in 2020 and Mount Hope Road in 2024. By way of example, though, so the city only funded $70,000. Looking at 6th Street West, that's obviously not enough, but it's a little preview into understanding the city's budget process where I didn't submit a budget with an additional $320,000, knowing the budget constraints and property tax concerns that the council had, and so there isn't a clear revenue path. Now, as a result, that might end up being like the case where the general fund budget is increased to accommodate street maintenance costs. We're just not at that point. This discussion will pave the way toward getting us to a decision. No? Yes?
Really bad.
No, don't encourage it, please.
So street maintenance program one, just...
I'm sorry, can we just go back to the last
Yeah.
slide? Just to clarify, the $70,000 is kind of the standard street maintenance that we have had in the budget every year. That's not to be looked at as a fraction of the almost $400,000 that we would need.
Yeah, it's a good question, Mayor Johnson. So it's a representation of a couple of things. So the city's switched over to a mill and overlay from what you've seen as a seal coat, or and if the council has specific questions on that, I'll ask Brian to come up and address that. But in the past, for many decades, you've seen cities kind of separate their town into 3 or 4 sections, and they just seal coat. But if you've noticed, seal coat projects, usually within 6 months, half of the rock that was laid down for that ends up in the gutter line or down the storm drain. And so cities are really looking at different ways to make use of those public dollars in a more productive way. And so this current funding that we have represents the seal coat, but it does potholes, et cetera. So we haven't created a funding stream or a way to pay for a transition to mill and overlay. And maybe one of the results is that we don't want to do that because we feel as a community we can't afford that. I'd let Dan or Brian get into the pros and cons of what you might end up with that and whether or not you're okay with that. But it's the term budget gap can be a little bit scary in that we were supposed to do something and we've decided not to. This is a new thing and we're trying to figure out how to pay for it. In order to do it, we have to fill that gap. This isn't something that's been ongoing where we've been derelict in our duties of not doing street maintenance the way we should have. We feel as a staff that mill and overlay is a better way to maintain streets, and the city ends up and residents end up getting more bang for the buck. It's just, can we afford to do that? And that's what we're trying to figure out.
Thank you.
So street maintenance program, these are the corresponding maps to that table. Here you can kind of see what roads we're looking at doing. Here's map 2. This kind of gets at the Carver Bluffs neighborhood. And then map number 3, which is Mount Hope Road.
Brent, I know we have a lot of time to talk about this at the end. If we were, that blue graph slide that we had, that
Pardon?
Courtney just asked to go back to also, this one. So if we did not budget to do 6th Street West in 2020, is there a reason that we're starting with this as our year right here for our planning?
No, other than it's I've really pushed the team. I feel like that's the highest priority is 6th Street West. It's a major route into the downtown, but the council, that's just a position. You could do you could readjust the priorities in any number of ways.
Right, but so we have it for 2020. Should this actually be starting in 2021, considering what we're looking at right now, rather than 2020?
Yes, we created this before this process started, so this is a representation. So we'll have to adjust, and we will based on the chosen revenue stream, and maybe the outcome is like we're going to push 6th Street West to 2022 because we know we're going to have state aid funding by then.
Okay.
But this isn't reflective of the current process we're in. It's a representation of where we were at with priorities prior to this kicking off.
Okay, thank you.
And now one of my favorite ways to talk about things is buckets, and so I feel like it's an easy way to kind of separate issues. And so looking at what are our choices, and this is just residential. There's a business side to that, and I'll get into some of those details. And so to start off, and I think this is a really good discussion to have with residents and businesses, is priority funding. So fully fund street maintenance as described in the street maintenance program, but use existing revenue amounts and sources to fund street maintenance. So you're not increasing property taxes, you're not implementing franchise fees, but then you have to cut then existing expenditures in order to fully fund that street maintenance. And so just based on that table, we'd have to generate close to $170,000 worth of cuts. And so what I've done to kind of tee up that conversation is look at, these were the items that were considered kind of the last ones in for the 2020 budget. Doesn't mean it's the exclusive list. You can look at a whole variety of different things. The example here is, though, that every action has a related action as far as do we take away the Chaska Recreation Partnership? Do we decrease our law enforcement time? Do we get rid of spring cleanup? You know, every one of those pieces will in turn, or might have somebody that advocates for keeping that in. And so it gets back to the notion of, well, you know, what kind of services do we want to provide? You know, there's, you know, all the cards on the table. You might end up wanting to look at personnel if you're going to make cuts. And so it's a scary thing to talk about, but I don't want to leave the impression that there are certain things that we can't talk about. And so that's one of those pieces. Personnel is obviously one of the most expensive, or is the most expensive cost of doing business in the city. But it's also, we just had a conversation about this before about, plowing streets and people wanting streets and trying to cover times when people have vacation. And so wanting to add more so that that level of service is where people expect it. So all these are just this never-ending balance, and it's kind of the exciting part, but it's also a challenging and stressful part of going through that. Another funding option is looking at property taxes. So you fully fund the street maintenance as described, but you increase property taxes to resolve the budget gaps. There's a really realistic opposition to the idea of franchise fees, saying that's another form of taxation, and just use the property tax system. Don't call it a fee, just tax, and use the powers that you have within that. And so we ran through an example of that. If we added close to $170,000 to the general fund, the city's tax rate would increase from 49.31 to 52.45, which would result in a $91 per year increase, or $7.58 per month on a $300,000 home. And so there are really distinct difference between franchise fees and property taxes. Is on franchise fees, you pay per connection, or you pay based on your level of service for your video services or cable TV services. On property taxes, you pay based on the value of your home. And so somebody has a $100,000 home is going to pay less for street maintenance than somebody who has a $350,000 home. And you can take that example through a variety of different pieces. So it ends up becoming kind of a philosophical debate on how you want to collect revenue and who pays for what and what's fair and what's not. Just kind of a little view into how that reflects with our other cities in Carver County. So you can see here the highest tax city in Carver County is Hamburg by city tax rate, down to Chanhassen at the lowest, and you can see where Carver compares. If you'd add that 169,000, you can see where we'd land. And it's not an accident that probably the least populated city is the highest tax rate, and the lowest city or highest population city has the lowest tax rate. But you can also see how franchise fees impact that. So the city of Carver collects about $3 million in franchise fees. And if you look at the city of Chaska, they collect $4.5 million in franchise fees. And so the city of Chaska collects more in franchise fees than the city collects in taxes. And so one of the conversations of having is, quite often, and reasonably so, compared to the city of Chaska for tax rate, and why can't the city's tax rate be lower? And there are a variety of other issues, and I'm not saying Carver should be where it is on property taxes. There are plenty of room to grow. I would want our city's property taxes to go down as well, but just to provide the context, I think these are important numbers to kind of get a full view of the issue that we have before us as a community. Another option is using available resources. So the city will fund street maintenance program from year to year based on our available resources. And the example that we use is, for a lot of people, it would be a great idea to save every month to do car maintenance and to do, tires and do the oil change and have the check of the vehicle. But if you don't have enough money after saving that $200 a month to pay for your groceries, well, it's not a great idea. And so to apply that to the city's philosophy, it might be a great idea to do a mill and overlay and add the cost of that. But if it puts our residents and businesses in an unenviable position as far as their monthly budgets and they just can't afford it, then as a community, as a council, we have to figure that out. And so, it might just be that we do 70,000 or 100,000 if that's the choice, and we prioritize and make decisions based on that. And we'll be okay in some areas, and then some areas might have an expedited schedule for street reconstruction, which can be a con, because sometimes, that ends up being a considerable amount, and if we can delay that, there's a benefit, but if you can't afford it, it doesn't work either, and so I just wanted to present that as an opportunity for discussion as well. Then getting into the franchise fee piece, to so fully fund the street maintenance as described in the program, but implement a $2.50 franchise fee per connection for gas and electric. The 5% gross revenue, so we explained it in our resident engagement piece as $5 because there wasn't the space or the capacity to get into the nitty-gritty of how cable service is done. And so we're taking that opportunity here based on the $75 average. There'd be a $3.75 per month cable charge. So if you did the $2.50 and 5% for cable services, be $8.75. There's different fee for cable users or commercials users. An estimated $123,000 would be generated from franchise fee revenues dedicated annually to the street maintenance fund. And here you can see that play out. So you can see here it's listed by small commercial, large commercial, and residential, and then different fees for that. So small commercial would pay $5. We'd have to define what that consists of between small and large commercial, but you can see kind of the breakdown. So there would be different fees for different users related to that. And then funding option for a $5 per connection and 5%. And so you look at that $13.75 a month, you can see the corresponding $5 for gas, $5 for electric, and $3.75, which would generate $218,000. And the piece with franchise fees, once you'd set those rates, they'd continue until a point where you decided not to have them, but as the population grew, that number would grow. It's kind of similar to property taxes. As values increase, that tax base or that dollar value increases. And then you can see the corresponding charges for both residential and commercial for those utilities. And then just wanted to add, I got this from the web. Excel Energy had a kind of a sample kind of franchise fee bill, and so I was looking for how to explain that. What would you see on your bill? And this is the best one that I found, where you get your normal charges for services, but then they'll specifically say a franchise fee. And I know we have a representative from Excel Energy here tonight, Michelle Swanson. If the council has specific questions related to how this works within the utility structure, she'd be a great resource. She's been a lot of help, not just on franchise fees, but a lot of other issues related to Excel and electric in the community, both here and in my previous position. She's a real big advocate for cities. So funding option other. So there's obviously other things you could do. You could do a combination. There might be some new ideas that we hear tonight. How does MSA funding work within this? And so that's kind of the red bucket there, is like, what are we not thinking of? What should we be paying attention to? And so our next steps tonight, we're doing the listening session. Let's talk about it. Let's see what we come up with. And then, as I mentioned before, February 3rd, we come back. The council would consider setting a public hearing date and issuing notices. And Larry would provide the background for the council. If we move forward on February 3rd, the council voted to move forward. We'd hold our first public hearing on March 16th. So with that, unless the council has any questions, I'm going to dig into the public comment. So the first comment is from Michael Quinn at 308. Excuse me, I'm going to make this a little larger. 308 Sibley Street. While I'm not opposed to upgrading our streets so that they are safer and friendlier to our vehicles, I question the need for this fee at this particular time. What is the need for it right now? What funds were used in the past to maintain and upgrade streets and roads? Where are those funds now? Is this new fee meant to add increased maintenance and repair to existing roads and that has been lacking in previous years? Is this new fee because of new roads that are being built due to the growth of the city? If so, why are these fees being passed on to new residents who have been here for many years and not to new residents who are the causes of the new roads needing to be built in the first place? I would agree that there are many roads in Carver that seem to have been ignored in the past, such as 6th Street. So if the reasoning for this is because the funds haven't been there in the past, then clearly something needs to be done to generate new funds. But it is hard to support this new fee without understanding fully why it is necessary at this time. The next submission is from Wendy, Carver Bluffs Parkway. Just because other cities are doing it doesn't make it okay. We already pay high taxes, high water fees, etc. Carver has a large gravel pit that has many trucks using the roads daily, plus the developments and larger trucks constantly using our roads. Really think about this. Thank goodness the referendum failed. We will push people out of the city. This is from Tom Dahl, 982 Sunny Ridge Drive. No on the franchise fees. I think the map is great showing Carver as the only city with no franchise fees. The citizens of Carver are proud that we have no franchise fees while the other cities do have franchise fees. I do think we have the highest water rates among those cities on the franchise fee map. Please post the cost of water for each city and then tell us what you can do to get us to have lower water rates. In the past, the citizens of Carver have expressed their dissatisfaction with the high taxes and now the high amount of development the city is allowing. We were told that the high taxes and growth bring in more revenue to the city, and in the long run, that will lead to lower taxes. So far, our taxes keep climbing every year. I live on Sunny Ridge Drive, and the heavy equipment that they have used to landscape the new heritage development has been hard on the roads. I do not want to pay for repairs caused by development that we did not want. As long as the developers are causing the wear and tear on the roads, make the developers cover the cost of the road maintenance. Under no circumstances should there be any franchise fees. Thank you, Tom Dahl. Sarah Matson, 978 Sunny Ridge Drive. I am not a fan of this idea. Those nearby cities have them, yes, but they are bigger than we are. Adding $15 a month to a family budget is difficult. And now have the streets, and also, excuse me, how have the streets been resurfaced before now? Can't we continue doing that? If they are wearing out faster than they used to, maybe it's because of all the trucks and construction, and maybe the construction company should be paying to resurface the streets they're tearing up. I think this is the case on Sunny Ridge Drive where I live. Krista Goodell, 975 Woodview Court. The franchise fee sounds like poor planning since there is already a deficit. Taxes are already high and increasing due to City Hall. How many still use cable instead of programs like Netflix and Hulu? Will the $10 to $15 fee cover the $850,000 shortage? Unfortunately, I don't think the city maintenance should be paid by residents, which is in addition to taxes already paid. Lori Cox, 4715 Dahlgren Road. I would like the city to discuss the use of grant funds first. Which ones city employees have looked at, and what they did not qualify for when considering new taxes on taxpayers, residents, and businesses alike. This question resulted in a radio silence in the past and needs to be addressed in order to provide greater transparency into municipal operations. The mission statement doesn't seem to ring true if this avenue is not explored prior to asking taxpayers before raising rates on any given service or infrastructure improvement. Other cities do. Carver should follow suit. Next is from Renee Giles, 1033 Sunny Ridge Drive. I oppose franchise fees because costs for street and trail maintenance should belong to those utility companies, commercial businesses, and industries hereafter referred to as businesses with interests in Carver. The priority for City of Carver staff should be working for the residents and not simply passing along fees when a shortage occurs. They should do their work. They should do the hard work to discover alternate funds or methods to ensure residents are not burdened with franchise fees. I believe businesses should pay these costs as their impact to streets is much higher than the average resident driving their cars. The city of Carver should look for ways to tie street maintenance program fees to those existing and future businesses. I've lived in Carver since 1986. In my opinion, the residents have always carried a higher cost burden because there weren't a lot of businesses in Carver. However, that has changed in the last few years. It's time the burden shift from residents to businesses. In addition, I believe that once franchise fees are in place, it will be a permanent responsibility for residents to financially support forever, and it will likely increase over the years. Excuse me. Finally, residents already pay for street maintenance via assessments. There is no justifiable reason to burden residents with franchise fees. These additional costs for living in Carver can be mitigated by doing the work to discover an alternative method to fund the street maintenance program. Respectfully submitted, Renee Giles. Kara Onstad, 1243 Maple Lane, oppose. Karen McGowan, 413 Dietrich Drive. I'm against franchise fees. It is a flat rate tax, not a fee. I believe all revenue paid for by citizens should be transparent. This fee will hurt the low-income and elderly residents the most. Many of them are living on fixed incomes. The utilities are necessary to their survival. They can't go with electricity or gas. This will increase their rates. Figure out another way to pay for road maintenance. This is an email submitted by Ben Hawk. Brent, I recently received the newsletter with my monthly bill and saw the article about assessing us homeowners franchise fees in order to raise funds for road improvements. I feel this is not the way franchise fees are used and should not be used here in Carver. I used to work for Xcel Energy and piped several towns for natural gas in Minnesota, where Xcel Energy paid a yearly franchise fee for the right to provide gas service to their customers. So instead of assessing those additional costs to the homeowner, why not pass them along to the companies that are providing the services directly, since they are using the city's right-of-way and not me or the rest of the citizens? Also, for several years, I have reached out to the city about trying to get another internet service provider here to the city to provide fiber optic internet. As I told the mayor recently, there are towns out in the middle of nowhere that have fiber optic internet for a much better price than I pay for Xfinity Internet TV than I pay here in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Why doesn't the city of Carver do a request for a proposal to fiber optic companies to provide service to the city through a franchise fee? I work from home, so it's very frustrating that the same towns I pipe for natural gas have fiber optic internet at a much cheaper rate, and I can't get the same service here. Please reach out if you want or need. Sincerely, Ben Hawk. And I did respond to Ben, letting him know that Jaguar has initiated providing fiber optic service in the city. The next comment is from Garen Steinbach, 708 Kirchy Hill Drive. Opposed. I don't care what you call it, fee or tax, the city will still be taking money from us. The residents of Kirchy Hill Drive and Dietrich Drive haven't even started paying for our $35,000 plus assessment for our road reconstruction project yet, 2019 improvement project. Why aren't the residents on the listed of affected streets proposed to be milled and overlaid being assessed such high amounts as we are? Also, have we started paying for the new city hall building yet? Not all residents can handle all the fees, taxes, assessments in such a short period of time. The city government needs to slow down, be more fiscally responsible, and spend within their means. If you can only fund 2 streets instead of 5 in the next few years with our current taxes, then that's all you fund until you have a different way to pay for them. Next is from Alan Herbansky and Nancy Vickmark, 1023 Sunny Ridge Drive. I'd hoped to attend tonight. It appears we won't be able to. We oppose the fee in that it is essentially just another form of taxation without the fairness of taxes based on income level, property value, or actual volume of usage. Believe this will hurt low-income, fixed-income residents most. $15 per month doesn't sound like a lot, but the gross $180 per year could make the difference in medical aid, prescriptions, etc. That said, obviously nobody wants more taxes. Perhaps we could review what is actually needed for street maintenance. We were assessed last summer. The city picked up the cost for street work on Sunny Ridge that few people wanted, and a good portion of which was on, excuse me, I'll read that sentence again. We were assessed last summer, and the city picked up costs for street work on Sunny Ridge that few people wanted, and a good portion of which was unnecessary, i.e. curbs, storm drains, etc. A simple mill and retar would have been sufficient for another 30 years. Lastly, can a fee be added to new home building permits to offset some of or all of this deficit? As noted, construction vehicles have been tearing up many of the streets on their way to the new housing projects. Believe the city could legally charge more, since this would be an increase to permits based on the actual road usage. Thank you for listening. Respectfully, Ellen Herbansky and Nancy Vickmark. Now I'll get into the city's Facebook comments. So we started off as a post asking the residents to provide feedback. There is some responses from the city of Carver that came from me, and so I'll just reference it, city of Carver response, because that's integrated into the comments in the packet. So Monica Ron, don't we already pay for these roads through taxes and car tabs? The city response to Monica, yes, existing revenue for street maintenance projects comes from property taxes. Tab revenue does not come to the city of Carver in the end. This is a question to residents and businesses. Should franchise fees be used as a means to do more street maintenance projects in Carver? Monica Ron, no franchise fees. We already pay enough for taxes and utilities, etc. The city response, thank you. This is the feedback that is needed. It'll also be shared during the listening session. Wendy Caucus Reed, no franchise fees. We are not the size of the other cities that do this. Taxes and water is high enough. Please listen to residents. City's response, thank you. Your comments will be shared with the council. Jenny Schultz, City of Carver, I'm not sure who is responding to this, but I had heard Brent Merrick state that when the population reaches 5,000, there is special funding available, for, at least for 6th Street. So if that's true, then it should be explored. The residents are already paying an additional tax for the new city hall as well. Plus, many residents are paying special assessments for the roads that have already been updated. Having yet another fee is unreasonable. The city response is to Pamela Schieffer. This is a little bit out of order. Thank you. This will be shared at the listening session. And then Cheryl Nelson. And aren't we at 5,000? Last time I conversed with the city about our road, we were very close to 5,000. That must be 2 years ago. I think a house or two has been built since then. The city's response to Jenny Schultz, correct, when the city of Carver reaches a population of 5,000, we will be eligible for what is called municipal state aid road funding. The funding is reserved for major streets within the city system, but you're right, this will definitely be an additional source of revenue. The city is expecting to begin receiving these funds in 2022. Thank you again. Pamela Schieffer, I am already paying an extra $30,000 over the next 15 to 20 years for the street improvement that the residents of Critchie Hill and Dietrich did not want. Now you want more money to fix roads. I think the city needs to find alternatives to spending by using state and federal programs to fund projects they need to fund. City's response, thank you. This will be shared at the listening session. I have a duplicate one here on the 2022 response to Cheryl Nelson. Thank you for the question. Yes, the Metropolitan Council provides the City of Carver with a population report every April. Based on the city's building reports, in 2019, the City of Carver was notified its population was 4,727. This report is used in part to determine Carver's eligibility for municipal street aid, since the city must reach a population of 5,000 to be eligible. Joe Al, what is the population currently? The city response, 4,727. Joe Al, when was the census completed? We've lived here for 7 years and have never filled anything out. Then Annette Hentz, we will be out of state on January 21st, so we'll not be able to attend the listening session. Please record our feedback, as our household is fine with a franchise fee dedicated to road maintenance in Carver. Thank you. The city response, thank you, Annette. Your comments will be shared with the council. Response to Joel from the city, no. It's based on annual building permits the city Carver submits to the Metropolitan Council. The last census was taken in 2010, which listed the city's population at 3,724. Another U.S. census is being taken in 2020. Mike Webb, wonder why it's so much cheaper in taxes to live in those three communities. Be transparent. Mike Webb again, sorry city. I feel you are doing it the right way by being transparent on what is a tax and what isn't. I don't feel the surrounding communities are transparent at all. Keep up the good work, stay transparent as always, and know that there are those of us that think you are doing an amazing job. Ain't easy and will never be cheap. And then these are the Carver Life comments as of 1/16/20 at 12:58 p.m. Ellen Herbansky, hope everyone has had a chance to read about the city proposed franchise fee, which the city describes in the newsletter, which accompanies the water bill, and hope folks will rely, here on the site, and on the site they list in the flyer. It's a tax described as a fee. Please support or oppose. Monica Ron, I oppose. We already pay for our roads, and I really don't want to pay an extra $15 a month for something that we already that should already be paid for. Teresa Polly, I guess now that County Road 40 is going to increase with gravel trucks, Carver residents will be paying for it. Sorry. Monica Ron, I think the gravel pit should be paying extra, not the residents. Teresa Polly, agree. Christina Mueller, aren't taxpayers already paying for the roads? What are the gas and vehicle taxes for? Aren't we Carver homeowners already taxed for the city streets? And when your streets need fixing, doesn't your home get assessed? Thought the homes around 4th Street got assessed last summer for the road work. Isn't a franchise fee supposed to pay for industries' use of the roads? So wouldn't industries like the sand company pay for it? How have road repairs been done before, or is there more to pay for now with the growth and trucks that are increasingly using the road? How do other cities collect a franchise fee? Our taxes are generally higher than the cities cited. What gives? The city response, very good questions. The link should answer many of your questions. A big piece is the city does not assess for street maintenance, rather only when roads need to be reconstructed, and then the city provided a link to its franchise fee project page. Pamela Schieffer, you pay twice a year money to cover road repairs and future maintenance repairs. I paid my amount in full back in July, and I think it was $150. That's close to $720,000 a year for road repair, upgrades, etc. Where is that money going each year that the city claims to have only $70,000? Lori Cox, the city should actually budget and plan through its revenue streams for anything needing maintenance after being built. Is that correct, Brent? Isn't that what public works departments in municipalities are for? Does the city of Carver actually think nothing needs to be maintained in the future? That's how your post reads. City's response to Lori, you're 100% correct on the planning and budgeting for maintenance. We do. I apologize if my words left you with a different impact. It wasn't the intent. The discussion we want to have is should we be more aggressive with street maintenance using additional revenue sources. Like all needs, budget priorities will be developed based on available resources and the tax burden for the community. Sorry for the confusion and the explanation of the issue at hand. Some of this doesn't make sense just based on the kind of the order, but Annette Hens said off topic. Paul Robinson, sorry Annette, however it's relevant. Guess you haven't lived anywhere where water was reasonably priced. I know you're such a supporter of Carver. In my opinion, the water quality is poor, especially the taste. Yes, the do treat it for iron, but nothing about the CA and MG. I lived in EP for 17 years and enjoyed softened water at a much lower price. Annette Hens, I agree with you that water in Carver sucks. That's why we spent $5,000 or so for a Connecticut whole house system, and now have even more expensive water, but it tastes wonderful. I was just cautioning that injecting water complaints into the franchise fee discussion might be inappropriate, often difficult enough to keep Facebook discussions manageable. And then there's a emoji for the Lisa Lee didn't come through, but it's someone, I don't know, what am I doing? Putting their hand over this. Alan Herbansky, lost my spot here. Alan Herbansky, you're correct. It essentially works as a tax, but is collected in a different manner. The city charges the private utility for the use of the right-of-way in the form of a franchise fee, which the utility company will pass on to the user. Alan Herbansky, Brent, it is a tax, a skunk by any other name, etc. I will comment on the city site and hopefully will be in town for the 21st meeting. As you know, we were assessed already for road repair upgrade, but worse, this is very aggressive. This is a very regressive tax. It taxes all the same without regard to income, level, property value, usage, etc. Got to be a more equitable way. Alan Herbansky, the city response, I wouldn't argue with you or anyone on the terminology of the fee tax. In addition, the points you bring up are important ones to discuss. You're right in that you were specially assessed for reconstruction. The projects described in this proposal would be for a mill and overlay work, commonly described as resurfacing projects by most. Mill and overlays are not assessed to neighboring property owners. I appreciate you advocating for folks to go to the website to share their thoughts. All written comments submitted will be read during the listening session. Alan Herbansky, we'll try to get to the meeting, Brent. I posted on here because some friends were discussing on their pages and thought the site would give more exposure and perhaps more encouragement to Nicholas Smith. Interesting, a tax that passes through, I must say, government sure finds exciting new ways to separate people from their money in fun ways. I wonder what would happen if the government used the brain power to increase revenue in other ways instead of a tax. We know it's their go-to, though. Habits die hard when it's OPM. This idea, though, would essentially increase our trust. This idea would certainly increase our trust in them. Here's an idea to increase revenue without taxing all citizens of who may be living out here for many years, and the roads would have held up just fine without the new developments. Charge the builders your franchise fee. You want to move to Carver and enjoy peace and quiet and good roads? Well, here's the community service charge. Call it fraternal partnership fee. Join the community, pay the fee. Seems those buying a brand spanking new house can help out. Older community needs upkeep. Everyone likes to be part of the group. Hyder, report this. City's response, I appreciate and understand your opposition. I don't disagree with the sentiment behind your idea to charge new development with a fee as you described. However, the city is not allowed to charge such a fee. That said, your message in opposition is received and will be shared with the city council. Pamela Schieffer, land developers who purchase the land to build all homes should automatically be charged a percentage the city can use to repair all the roads they will build and need in the future. Monica Ron, so the city can't charge them a fee, but they can gouge taxpayers who live here. Aaron Steinbach, I agree, Monica. What is the ordinance or language that says you can and can't charge these fees too? I haven't even started paying for my assessment of $37,845 yet from last summer and the new study hall. What next does the city of government want to tax us on? Thank God we were at least able to vote down one tax hike from the school district. How about this, city of Carver? Live within your means money-wise and slow your roll. If you only have enough money to repair 1 or 2 streets a year, then do just that. Quit jamming all of these expensive projects down our throats. I don't get raises at work every year like you might. Nicholas Smith, to the city, thanks for that. Wondering, as a city, why you aren't allowed that, which is referring to the charging new developments. Couldn't you grandfather the existing homeowners on a waiver on the franchise fee while those who are new residents would be subject to it? Then after 5 years, those new residents would be graduated to the grandfather clause. Easy to track because it's all tied to address. Need to think outside the box a little for those who've paid for the development thus far. It would be a rite of passage for the new Carver residents. Thanks for the response, Brent. Nicholas Smith, Pamela Schieffer agreed. You make it progressive, meaning government, especially in Minnesota, will like that term anyways. This isn't directed at our city officials. The progressive chop That's more for state government. City response to Nicholas Smith. Thank you. The boring answer is that state statute and recent court cases primarily involving the city of Woodbury prohibit this. On the grandfather clause, for 1 minute, I'll go down that road. We could make that happen. Let's say the utility company charged the fee to the 100 new families in 2019. We would generate about $1,500. I do 100% agree that outside of the box thinking is required. Appreciate your thinking. Meredy Hillman, why is the city not allowed to charge the new development a fee? Trucks that they use to build homes use our roads. Monica Ron, Karen Steinbach, right. Meredy Hillman, I do wonder why the budget was so inadequate, and yes, live within your means. We are retired and don't have extra money coming in monthly, and Social Security raise is not $15 a month. Again, from Meredy Hillman, is this for 1 year, 5 years, or forever? And can the city continue to raise it as they feel needed? City response, it's a fair question, so I'm glad you asked. The long story short, the state doesn't allow for this type of fee. A real world example, for the most part, all the streets in the Carver Bluffs need to get a mill and overlay, but it cannot directly be tied to any certain development project. Hope that helps. Also, city response, it could be used for as long as the city council keeps it in place, referring to the franchise fee. The length that has not been discussed by the council. This might be something you want to weigh in on with the council. Another city response to Meredy and Guerin, I understand your sentiment. I would offer that this isn't a budget adequacy issue, but rather how you want to handle costs of street maintenance. That suits your car, for example. It would be a good idea to put money aside each month for replacement tires, brakes, the engine going out, and so on. If your budget doesn't allow it, you save as much as you can, knowing you still need money for groceries. Doesn't mean you're being irresponsible, you're just budgeting based on your pay. And then continued response from the city. We can put more money away for street maintenance, car repairs by cutting other budget areas. It sounds like you're advocating for this. It may come to that. We're asking if residents want to supplement by dedicating more resources. As cuts, depending upon what it is, are not always supported. The city understands the ask. That's why the council wants to hear from residents on it. It sounds like you would prefer the city to make different budget priorities. Nicholas Smith, to the city, thanks for taking your time to respond. The info, it does help. So the question about roads themselves, I just was at the Minnesota Asphalt Pavement Association event, 2-day event, and we go because our clients like MPM have breakout sessions and they talk about asphalt is better than concrete, basically, or how new mixes are lasting longer. Anyway, one session I suggested the lifespan of anywhere to 18 to 22 years, depending upon smaller maintenance. Now, granted, these types of asphalt typical are using in highway mixes. I feel like you guys just redid my area of road, let's say in the Bluffs. Why not extend that duration of maintenance? Are we getting the full life of these roads or just repairing them? What are your thoughts here? City's response, I'm not sure I'm following you, but let me try. You're correct, road life is around 25 to 30 years. I'm not entirely sure what street you live on, but in the 10 years I've been here, we've only milled and overlaid Carver Bluffs Parkway at the entrance. Ultimately, we believe the mill and overlay will extend the street life, and to that end, delaying a full reconstruction that results in special assessments for property owners. I'd expect the mill and overlay will extend the life of the road by 5 to 10 years, pushing out what usually ends up being a $8,500 special assessment down the road. Please let me know if I missed something. Good question. Douglas Olson, we just moved here. Reading the water bill, fees besides water usage, base rate fee, family stormwater fee. My actual usage is only $4, but my bill is $63. Somehow sewer usage is $4,000. To me and other places I've lived, this is very expensive. Nicholas Smith, one other item to point out, it seems in the explanation of the franchise fee, they point out it's okay for us to adopt this budget because cities like Chaska, Chanhassen have them. It doesn't say that directly, but we don't always compare but don't we always compare Little Carver to those places? Sorry, I got to take a drink here.
I was going to say, do you want to tag out? Do you want? I'm reading for a long
I feel
time.
like the micro machines, man. People in Chaska are probably okay with paying the fee because their utilities are co-opted. I had a buddy who actually made money or received a payout on his utilities a few years ago. The water is certainly way less from a yearly spend perspective, so needs to apples to apples. I don't know about Chanhassen, but suspect it's not as much. Pamela Schieffer, I oppose, as I already have $30,000 on my property tax for the next 15 to 20 years. At the interest the city decides to charge me every year. No one on Kirchy Hill or Deep Creek wants city water and sewer. Few wanted the sidewalk, yet we pay for something that residents fought hard to stop because the mayor at the end of our street insisted we have these improvements despite all homes on the street signing a petition otherwise. No more unnecessary fees, taxes, assessments. Learn to budget and don't waste millions of dollars on things no residents on the street want. Listen to your residents. Pamela Schieffer. Also, don't compare towns that with 3 times Carver's population when making decisions. More homes equals less cost to homeowners on a flat fee. That's not a tax. Douglas Olson. I personally don't want to be the size of those other cities. We were drawn to the quaint small town feel, not higher populated, traffic congested city life. Aaron Steinbach, I couldn't agree more with Pamela Schieffer with your original comment that includes the assessment details. City of Carver needs to live within their means money-wise. Natalie McLaughlin, nope, that's ridiculous. Oppose. Chrissy Mickle, I've lived in the city of Carver for 3+ years and never received a newsletter. I don't receive a water bill where I live, but I am a citizen of Carver. Is the message that I don't matter. Sue Richards, you matter, and someday even you'll get a water bill, and a much bigger bill than that, like we did, because like us, you'll probably be forced to go to city water. The city's response. This can be corrected. Please share your address here or call into City Hall. It has to be added to the mailing list. Provided the City Hall phone number. Wendy Reed. You may want to check on your water bill. They've mailed them out to some of my neighbors in the Bluffs that amounted to $2,500 who hadn't received one for a while. Sue Richards, I'm pretty sure she has her own well like we do, but now we also have to city water too. Chrissy Mickle, I live in a building where the owners pay the water. I assume it's built into my rent. Tom Weber, fees for this, a tax for that, it all adds up. Part of the charm of this small, wonderful river town are the amenities that it does not have, or that it does not have. Focus on creating a vibrant town center and reducing taxes and fees, not keeping up with the neighbors. Jody Blummer, it has lost its charm for me. Tom Weber, I love it, but I can see with the large growth we are experiencing, it will fade. Too bad, not many small towns like this one, left like this one. Dan Barkley, the city should limit the garbage service to 1 hauler and get bids to service Carver. That would put 1 truck on city streets instead of 3 or more trucks. That would help the streets. Taxing residents is not always the answer. Christina Mueller, agree. It's a little annoying to have different trucks on different days. Paul Robinson, absolutely. Heavy trucks cause excessive wear and tear on the streets. Sue Richards, yeah, but remember, once you get only 1 hauler, then they can raise rates like they want. A friend of mine has that, and he pays up his.
You know what?
Took us.
Abrupt with fees and has no other choice. Christina Mueller, that's why they bid out to avoid racing. I'm glad I just didn't get into a mode there and say that. So. Sue Richards, if it only worked that way. Dan Barkley, I'm no expert, but wouldn't the city put the bid out every year? I would think that 1 hauler would make more money with less cost. Sue Richards, I agree with you. That's the way it should go. Matt Waldack, ask Bloomington and Shakopee how they like that. Plus, that is just another way for them to get you to pay more money. They will just hide it in the service fees. Dan Barkley, I don't want to pay the city of Carver. You pay the hauler just like we do now. Matt Waldeck, so you want the city to force a monopoly on residents. Dan Barkley, like I said, I'm no expert. I think 3 or 4 sanitation companies all hauling on the same street is not helping streets. Monica Ron, I like my garbage hauler, so please just leave well enough alone. Janet Schultz, the city is not doing a good job running things now, and we would let them force a monopoly on us. Even if they want to revisit the contract every 2 years, the big boys will underbid until they are the only hauler and then look out. Kevin Tung, as consumers, we should have a choice. The roads are going to get broken and worn, whether there's, the message got cut off. Janet Schultz, the problem with the roads is the amount of traffic, poor installation, and the salt. You have to understand that trucks are the only here 1 day a week. For most of us, that's one trip down your road. If it is a good road, no problem. Michael Quinn will go to the city website and post comments, as I have a few questions as to the need for this fee right now. Renee Stuber, ridiculous. Shelley Devon, I have lived on 6th Street for 27 years. The road is in shambles because of all the trucks flying up and down, hauling trailers loaded with heavy equipment that shakes my house. Posted at 30 miles per hour. Bull crap, call attacks, oppose. Teresa Polly, I believe this only pertains to taxpayers of Carver. Renee Stuber, maybe make the gravel pit pay for all the extra trucks they will be putting on the roads. They cause more damage than normal cars. Teresa Polly, agree. Janet Schultz, truth is Mueller's pays 15 cents for every ton leaving the pit. What the county does with the money is the question. The reason the roads are so poor, maybe because they weren't put in correctly. Pamela Schieffer, anyone know when the next election is for mayor? I think it's time we get one that knows how to do this job and balance a budget and listen to the residents instead of force the residents to pay money to things she wants versus what the community needs. Monica Ron, what I am wondering is, do they really need to spend money on a dog park and a frisbee golf course when we're having trouble paying to keep our roads up? Pamela Schieffer, exactly. We also don't need a splash pad in the downtown. None of that will produce money for the town. We need to build some restaurants and a retail store to help increase revenue. Monica Ron, agree. City response. Monica, good question. There is no current funding for the project other than the money primarily collected from new development in the form of park dedication fee, which has to be spent on parks. Monica Ron, got it. Garen Steinbach, a new mayor and some new council members who listen to the residents. Monica Ron, how about the splash pad Pamela mentioned? Monica Ron, it's frustrating. I have a couple of friends on the council that do listen. Not sure why this is even an option, though. City response to Monica, same as described above. The park dedication fund would have to fund the project for it to move forward. Monica Ron, thanks. Always good to understand that, although I still disagree with the franchise fee. Janet Schultz, you're blaming the council, but they turn most things over to the city manager, Merrick, so that's who you want to talk to. He has his own plans. Kevin Tung, Frisbee Golfware, city response to Janet Schultz. I'm sad to read that this is how you feel. That said, I'm more than happy to talk or meet with you or others on any topic involving the city of Carver. Teresa Polly, vote for Christy Mock. She'll get the job done on the next term. Oops, I meant Christy Mock. Yeah, typo, sorry.
She'd be a real good friend of yours.
Pamela Schieffer, when is the next vote? Teresa Polly, not sure. They just voted in new mayor this past fall. Not sure how long their term is. Ralph Pencil, fees are just another way of extracting money from residents of Carver. In one way, it is very equitable in that everyone pays an equal amount. Homeowners and renters both pay for the services rendered. Another way to look at it is that our city and county have been raising taxes so that we have the highest tax county in the state. When you couple that with the fact that they still don't have enough money to take care of basic infrastructure, indicates gross mismanagement of our tax dollars. Exhibit 1, the city assessed additional taxes for the new city hall that should have never been built, over $5 million, when they could have spent less than $1 million to remodel. Built on the same landlocked site with architecture that doesn't match the historic downtown Carver, when they hold property owners accountable to that standard. If they really needed a new building, they could have built it up on JCP next to the existing facility, which would have allowed for a single-story structure that had room to expand. Reducing taxes for the residents should be priority 1. Seek revenue from commercial property taxes in the long term by encouraging commercial development. Make the gravel pit pay for infrastructure improvements if they expect to increase capacity. City response to Ralph Pencil, thank you for sharing. I'd be interested in hearing more from you on this. Would you have time to grab a cup of coffee? Ralph Pencil, I sent a PM but never heard back. And then city response, didn't get anything from you, sorry. And then Ralph Pencil wanted to know who was responding on behalf of the city. And I said, my name is Brett Merrick. I'm the city manager here in Carver. Let me know what works for you. Happy to buy you a cup of coffee and chat about this sometime. Council member Mock, hi folks. I want you to know that I am listening. There has been a lot of heavy discussions at our work session and council meeting about this. Please email, please come to the council meeting, voice your opinion, it matters. Councilmember Christy Mock. Jody Blummer, just like the gravel pit expansion, people did show up for that and it didn't matter. Councilmember Mock, that was a Carver County Commissioner's vote. The city of Carver did not vote on this. It is outside of our city limits. Jody Blummer, thanks for clarifying. Ralph Pencil, yes, it was a county issue, but did the city council show up and voice their opposition? Anna Dingler, I agree with Councilmember Mock. If you don't show up and communicate your opinions, how does the council know what the people want? I have seen the council support what the residents want when voiced, as well as seen them do what is best for the city. They'll never be able to make everyone happy, but the residents we need to remember. But as residents, we need to remember that the things that will benefit the greater community should come before personal desires. I'm not saying I'm excited about more fees, but understand why we may need them and have discussion with those in a place to support you. You may be surprised what you learn. Monica Grapevine, opposed. Carver water is already too much. Getting there here. Jody Blummer, 4 more days for me and I don't have to deal with excessive taxes in this town. Keep moving people in and taxing the existing homeowners. Farewell, Carver. Alan Herbansky, by the way, Brent, thank you for reading and responding to comments. Not something you have had to do since it isn't an official city site. I appreciate your responses. Monica Ron, I agree. Thanks, Brent. Janet Schultz, oppose. And by the way, what is a family storm fee? Janet responds to the city. Family storm fee pays for the costs associated with maintaining stormwater ponds, drainage systems, street sweeping, and so on. Sarah Bournes, opposed. Unfortunately, Carver is taxing residents out of their homes. Jody Blummer, yes, they are. Renee Hannon, opposed. If we let this happen now, the fee will never go away. Only grow to a larger fee in the future. Balance the budget with the funds we have. No excuse for mismanaging taxes. Growth, taxes, infrastructure have been a public concern for years. Janet Schultz, originally the fee started out as $2 to pay for the wastewater treatment plant we needed. The plant has now been level, but the fee is called family storm fee, which is now over $9. The city response to Ms. Schultz, you're thinking of something different. Easy mistake, lots of terms out there. Susan Knable, oppose. They are charging too much now on a fixed income. It's getting hard to keep with the water bills. Josh Bugby, is there an ordinance against putting in a private well within city limits? We love not getting a water bill each month. Pamela Schieffer, probably not, as I live in city limits. And the city put in sewer and water this past summer. Everyone that was on a well and septic must be switched over to sewer and water by August 2020 or will be fined. Josh Bugby, thank you. Bummer, we was hoping it would be an option for those within city limits. Pamela Schieffer. Only thing you can have is existing well be used for outside water purposes. I would contact City Hall to be positive. City response to Mr. Bugby, feel free to call Brian Scope, Public Services Director. He can run through the issue with you. Josh Bugby, thanks. No issue on my end. I'm outside of the city limits. I was just throwing it out there to the group in case it was an option for residents to consider. And then Pamela Kurtzman, looks like several suburbs using franchise fees. She posted a link regarding Chanhassen's new fee. Ralph Pencil, so it seems they already made the mistake of allowing them to be implemented without corresponding reduction in property taxes. City response to Mr. Pencil, I understand your point, however, this isn't a this or that scenario. I'd offer this as a question on whether to invest more in maintenance in order to push the costs associated with full reconstruction. Ralph Pencil, I think it's a matter of priorities. The priority should be to budget within our means instead of repeatedly raising taxes and fees. City response, I can agree with that sentiment, budget priorities. It's just a matter of defining what those priorities are and what needs to be cut in order to fully fund street maintenance at existing revenue levels. Verity Hillman, thanks for your input. Honestly, I'm still not on board and I am unable to attend the discussion session. City response, that's okay. Please go to thecityofcarver.com and submit your comments and I will read them at the meeting. That took longer than I thought, but I'm glad I did it. The end.
Brent, maybe a suggestion. Maybe a suggestion for the future would be that we would have like the email process be the official one that comes through, so that we don't. A lot of this Facebook, I appreciate you reading it. I'm tired, for you for having to read and read and read. But some of that is just banter back and forth that maybe isn't quite on the point. So, I mean, I think it's great that we put it on Facebook so people know it's there, but maybe make it very clear that the official way to have your comments sent to us is through the email.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, so let's see. Moving forward, we can now have the public portion of the listening session. Thank you all so much for bearing with us. If anyone is interested in coming up and sharing your thoughts, comments, questions, etc., please come up to the front, introduce yourself with your name and your address. How's it going, Reed?
Not too bad. My name is Reed Welch. I live at 1813 Red Oak Ridge. I'm also on the Planning Commission. So in general, I'm supportive of the idea of road maintenance. I hate taxes as much as the next guy, but I also believe we need to invest in the future. I guess I would maybe have a few suggestions of just quick questions. So when we have a new development, the developer builds the roads currently, and then when does the city take over maintenance on a new development typically? Aaron or Brett?
Yeah, at some point after punch list items are completed, then the developer, the city accepts the road and then starts doing the maintenance.
Okay.
So it's, I would, 1 to 2 years after the development occurs.
Okay, sure. And then, do we have any idea of how many new roads we've added with the new development? I mean, I know Sysavvy's had 21 miles currently. Are those mostly existing, or do we have? I guess my question is: have we significantly increased the amount of roads we need to maintain with all the new development?
I don't have a percentage.
I'm just curious.
But I would say it's within the last year or two, it's greater by percentage than past years.
Okay, sure. And actually, ironically, the new developments are the ones that need the least amount of maintenance because of the new roads.
Correct.
where all of the existing residents are, I guess, like you said, we've been in our house about 10 years, so our road's maybe halfway through its life. So I feel fine contributing money to help out the actual Carver residents who've been here 20, 30 years, whose roads are actually the ones that are getting replaced. So I don't know if we can maybe sell that better, and that it's the current residents that are getting the benefit, and the new residents are actually helping them. And then, let's see. And actually, I kind of found it surprising that actually a property tax increase would be generally, I think you had in one of them, estimated about $14, but if you did a 0.3% property tax based on the 300,000, it'd be $9. I actually found that surprising. I was kind of...
Yep, and that's based on value.
Sure.
So,
So again, it depends on what you define as fair. Do you define as fair as paying everyone the same amount, or fair as in what they can afford? So I would not be opposed to a property tax increase, again, because that would be fair in terms of presumably your house is worth more, presumably you have a little extra money to contribute to the community. But again, if you would like to define as fair as everyone pays the same amount, that's fine with me as well. So, depending on what other residents prefer, I wouldn't oppose either. Let's see. And then you said that the street life was about 30 years, and I assume that's with proper maintenance?
correct.
And then about how often would we expect a mill and overlay in that 30-year? Would it be 1 to 2 or?
Probably one.
One, okay.
Yep.
Okay. I had one other note here. And then just maybe another helpful chart would be, showing as a lot of people seem to think it's a new development, whereas obviously on the Planning Commission we want more development so we can get more, more residents, and people love Carver. I love Carver. But just maybe it would be helpful to see as the new house gets built, where the everyone assumes that those property taxes, that house doesn't have any other expenses that the city also has to incur, like increased police protection, increased what am I thinking, like water, or just different other expenses to show maybe where the new houses aren't necessarily contributing as much as everyone thinks, or just kind of getting maybe a better, I guess trying to sell it, just some more information. I think listening to the comments, it sounded like just maybe some more information about how our current expenses are allocated would help people understand why there's an existing shortfall, I guess is my opinion. Let's see, there was one other thing. And then, I guess that was the city budget, right? Just kind of see how the city budget has grown, and we have a corresponding expense increase, for police or other expenses. I think would help sell it to people and again, I liked your idea of pitching it as preventative maintenance on the car. I think that was good. So that's all my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Reed.
Yep.
Anyone else? All right. Nobody else came to share their thoughts on this. All right. Thank you, Reed. So for the purposes of tonight, we're just looking to have the listening session, and then I think, as Brent laid out at the beginning of his presentation, we will talk about it at our next meeting. So moving on to item 9.2, the environmental assessment worksheet for Timber Ridge. Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight we are reviewing the Timber Creek. Sorry, it's Timber Creek. The agenda, I think, says Timber Ridge.
Okay.
You're fine. Timber Creek, just so we're all talking about the same thing. We're talking about the environmental assessment worksheet. So a little bit of context about where we are. On the screen right now is the property outlined in red. We've been referring to it as the Song property for several years. So we're west of Carver Elementary, near Copper Hills, south of Meridian Fields. Should this project continue to move forward, we would expand our western property annexation area further. So this would add additional property west to the current city limits in Carver. So we've seen this project before just at concept level. So you'll recall it was a couple months ago, we talked through lots of options, thinking about Ironwood Park expansion, units. We talked a little bit about well and septic systems. So we've had a pretty lengthy discussion just at concept level at this point. But I'm going to ask that tonight we only think about the EAW, or the Environmental Assessment Worksheet. And tonight we're just answering the question, is it complete or not? So your review tonight will be to either authorize me to sign and distribute the EAW, or to come back with some additional questions for the developer and their engineering team. Again, no land use review. So
We're not talking lot sizes, we're not talking number of lots, we're only talking about the EAW and if it's done or not. So let's run through a couple of fast facts about what an EAW is, just so we can all be on the same page. So an EAW is a process that's run through the EQB. There's so many acronyms in here, I will go slow, which is the Environmental Quality Board. So what an EAW does is that it determines if an EIS, or an environmental impact statement, is required. So an EAW is an abbreviated version of that EIS. So we go through, there's 20 questions, and in those 20 questions, if there's something that's glaring, that could be a huge issue, it's typical that an EIS is required. At that point, the EIS is a much deeper dive into the issue, how to mitigate it, what it looks like long term. So again, the EAW is 20 questions, and it determines if a project has significant environmental impact, significant being the key word. Something that's great about the EAW is that it invites experts across the state to look at the EAW and apply their lens, which we might not think about just because we're different agencies. People have different jobs, they have different regulatory ability. So why are we doing an EAW? We don't do these typically. Why is this project different? So an EAW is required in the metro region if it is projected to have more than 250 unattached units. Timber Creek is projected to have 270. So since we're past that 250, it's required day one. So it's part of the planning process needed to continue. A good example of an EAW that we did recently was Lakeview Industries. So if you'll think through that process, we did it about a year and a half ago during the Lakeview Industries approval process. So a little bit different that it was industrial, but it's the same questions that are asked each time. So something that's interesting is that the project proposer in the city, we don't require or control what the questions are. Every project is looked at through the same lens. Largely, 1 through 6 are admin questions, talks about location, acreage, project proposer, etc. 7 through 20 is where the document gets kind of some of its meat. So it talks about land coverage, plant communities, historic properties that are on the site, cumulative potential impacts, along with other potential environmental impacts on the site. So this is the lengthy list of the groups that review the EAW. So if you want to run through them, it's long. Each one of these agencies gets 30 days to look at this document, to go through what they're the expert at, to say, yes, this checks the box, no, I have concerns, I have questions. So the EAW is also available on the city's website and at City Hall, so if a resident wanted to see this document, if they're thinking about the project, it is distributed not only to these groups, but also the general public. And again, everyone has that same 30-day review period to provide their comments and questions. So what are the next steps? Tonight, again, we are just asking that the council determines if the EAW is complete or not. Should you find it to be complete, the EAW enters into that 30-day review period. So we send out a lot of mail with this process, which feels a little archaic and strange. It gets posted, and it's available to everyone for their comments. It's anticipated that responses do come in. Generally, there's sometimes just something that a group of people know. We can note the comment, but include it as part of the EAW. Then the EAW will come before the council again to determine if an EIS is required. This is an important step because those other agencies have had the chance to look at it at that point, and we might have some different ideas that we need to think through. Something that's interesting that's in the EAW and a little bit overwhelming is the list of permits that need to be applied for, so those are on the screen now. So the EAW process does not circumvent any of our typical planning process, so it still requires the same review. And for this project, it will require annexation, since it's not currently in our city limits, which requires rezoning, since it'll come into the city as ag and will not be used for an ag purpose, preliminary plat, and final plat. So the EAW is a separate step that we're taking, does not negate the land use process. So some big picture things about the EAW that usually are interesting to not only members of the council, but also the general public. So thinking about water on the site. So in the EAW, no impaired waters were found on the site. So no creeks, streams, rivers, lakes were on the property that were in poor shape that would need mitigation prior to development. And then something else, This project would need to meet all requirements of the CCWMO, which I think we all know is a pretty exhaustive process that the county goes through to make sure a project meets their permitting.
Aaron, if it's on an ag property, what would be considered an impaired water?
So if there was a creek running through it as the ag property that needed some type of mitigation, it would be an impaired water.
So like what type of, what would be a mitigation trigger? Erosion, runoff?
Yep, it could
all of
be
the above?
pollution.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. Another one is ecological resources. So yes, it's largely a farm site, but the site gets a little unique where there are bluff areas with some really historic old trees on the property. Something that the EAW showed was that 43% of the site is preserved as open space. And the developer has been really thoughtful to avoid major forest areas and bluff areas. So some major tree species were listed on the site, the oak forest and maple basswood, and then the sugar maple. All largely are hoping to be avoided. Again, we'll start to learn more about the site through preliminary plat and final plat, where a formal tree survey will be done. But largely, these large resources are avoided in this project. And then finally, traffic, which I know is a big question for most people. The timing of this project probably could not have been better. If it had been a couple years ago, there would have been some really big question marks not having Monroe Drive and then being where we're at with the JCP project. So both projects do contemplate the Song property to develop. So we've seen this at, we have it guided as low density residential in our comp plan, which this meets, meaning this project has been thought through in relation to Monroe Drive and the JCP expansion project. So with both of those projects coming together, Timber Creek is not anticipated to generate traffic that cannot be handled by the existing Monroe Drive and the proposed JCP project. So staff has completed a review and given comments back to Westwood and the development team. Overall, there were no major unknowns or concerns. We found the EAW to tick the boxes of the questions that we needed. The next that we're excited to get back is to allow the expert groups to perform their review, just to think about it a little bit differently than we probably do, and to enter into the 30-day review period. So again, tonight is just the environmental assessment worksheet completeness, making sure those 20 questions are answered adequately. And the request is to authorize the Community Development Director to sign and distribute the EAW for review. Casey is here with Summergate if you have specific questions. Otherwise, I'll open it up for questions, comments, discussion.
Do you want to come up? First of all, thank you for your patience. You have sat through a presentation.
Yeah. Oh, you just listened to Brent.
I'm just glad I didn't make any Facebook comments.
Good job. So are we. So are we. Any questions?
Can you go to the first page of the acronyms?
Yeah.
The EAW.
There.
There it is. Who is the controlling, for the EQ, the Environmental Quality Board, EQB, who is the controlling society for that?
The state.
The state? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
No.
All right.
I'd like to make a motion authorizing, I'm sorry.
No. Nope, go ahead.
I would like to make a motion authorizing the Community Development Director to sign and distribute the Timber Creek EAW.
I'll make a second to the motion.
We have a motion by Councilmember Mock and a second by Councilmember Sayre. Any further discussion? No. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I could use a break.
Yes.
Before we move forward. So I would like to make a motion that we take a break until 9:05, if that's okay. 7 minutes, good for everybody? Good. All right. I think we need a second for the motion.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Thank you.
Okay.
No one's opposed.
We'll see you back.
Okay. Hi, good to see you.
Don't we recap reconvene? What do you want us to do?
All right, so we'll, it's 9:05, we will call the meeting back to order. Up next on the agenda is the water treatment plant plans and specifications. Mr. Lattis, take it away.
Dan, can I ask a question? Are we
Yeah.
close to getting the 2019 figure
The what?
for that previous slide?
The 2019?
Yeah.
I'd have to defer to Brian on where we're at on that.
Thank you.
Okay. So where's all that growth coming from? Of course, your comprehensive plan, which you're very familiar with, growth, plenty of growth left out to the west. You just saw another one that could be a potential expansion of demand. So there's your maximum day demand. So over the past couple of years, 17 and 18, you've gotten into that peak zone. So when we say maximum capacity, we talk maximum sustainable capacity. Obviously, you got past what we'd consider your capacities in the past, but sustainable capacities, but you didn't run out of water. So this is where we say max reliable capacity. You get in situations where if something goes wrong during these peak days, you're in a tough spot, and so that's why this is a good time to be planning and moving forward with expansion.
So estimated future water demands, this is kind of driving the point that this isn't a if, it's a when. If you look at 2030, what type of demand you'd have if your population doubled in accordance with your comp plan, you're not talking a little over, you're talking over double what your current capacities are. So it's really just a timing issue at this point. When should expansion occur? So water treatment needs by 2040, the finding was 3 million gallons per day to get up to that 15,000 population mark. 6 lower production wells, I think we've talked a little bit about that in the past. Low production wells might come in at 400 or 500 gallons per minute, sometimes even less. You'd need 6 of those, or you'd need 3 higher production wells, and we've talked a lot about well siting. That comes into the presentation for siting the next water treatment facility. Should that have been one of the options selected, that was a very, very key item as to where it would be for high production wells. And additional elevated storage would be necessary at some point here. So this kind of, I guess, graphically depicts what the needs would be. So those little dots on the left, that's actual data points. That's what you have used. Those are your averages. The blue are your averages. The red are your peaks during that period. And you're staying just ahead of your existing treatment capacity. As you move yourself to the right, you start getting into the yellow, which is the expansion needs. And so ultimately, what we showed was 3 million would be needed for ultimate build out of 2040, which is a population of 15,000. What we're talking about here is 10,300, a doubling of the city population. Would be the expansion plans that you're going to be seeing below, which is another 1.5 million gallons of added capacity. So some prior questions I think I'll just go through as I present the remainder of this here. What is the urgency? That's one of those questions that we would expect in this type of situation. How long is reasonable to wait? That's one that I'll let you ask if I haven't answered it by the end. Can we conserve water to delay new water treatment is another common question. What as city growth slows down? I think Brent mentioned that a little bit about these projections of connection fees and such. You know, that's certainly a consideration as you consider payback models and such. How are water treatment options reviewed for cost implications? There's different ways to treat water, which are what I'm going to be talking about here a little bit. How many different scenarios did we evaluate? But that was part of the process for sure. And can we phase water treatment for expansion? And you'll see that as one of our options. So the options considered were to delay water treatment. It's certainly always out there when you have an expense to this nature is how long can you wait? Build a new 3 million gallon per day water treatment facility in 2022, which would be meeting the upcoming needs. That would be the full build out option. Build 1.5 million per day in 2022 phased, build 1.5 in 2022, build another 1.5 once you hit that 10,000 mark. Again, once your population is about double. Construct temporary expansion, that was also evaluated, building a lower cost temporary facility with temporary treatment that would ultimately be replaced longer term with permanent treatment, and that was weighed against expanding the existing facility. $1.5 million expansion on the existing site. So some of the key questions and issues that we had to face when we were going through the different options and alternatives was wells. Where does Carver get wells from long term? It's a huge issue. It's a big part of the cost of getting water and treating it. Is where are those wells? How far is it that you have to pipe it to a water treatment facility? So we looked a lot about out west. There's a higher capacity well field out there, so that's going to come into the options analysis here. Property acquisition for new water treatment, where would it go? Is land available? Cost to buy it? Land availability versus the timing. All those things get factored into the equation. And then facility type. What's the most cost-effective expansion design, short and long term? So build new, various options reviewed. There's different filtration options. If you're building a new facility, those were weighed against an expansion, which would be called gravity filtration, which is the same filtration that you have at the existing plant. So option one, delay treatment, reduces the burden on current ratepayers because you're not doing it right away. but allows the population to grow prior to larger investment. Some of the cons of that is, obviously, stating the obvious, you risk running out of water. So that was considered to be not recommended, just based on the fact of your timing right now really mandates that you would want to move forward on expansion based on where you're at on demand and your current growth model. So it also, if you push it down the road, we have to add inflation costs to water treatment on any alternative. So build new 3 MGD facility, long-term solution. It is ultimately the lowest cost, and you'd rationalize that by if you build anything outright in one shot, it's always cheaper than doing it in multiple phases. It's not always practical. Sometimes as you're bearing the cost up front, you might be able to cash flow it and say that's the lowest cost, but it's also, you're not going to need all that for many, many years. So the value of that money now is really the issue at hand when you start talking full build out. So the cons obviously are a very high upfront cost. Land availability is critical. That really needs to be worked out sooner than later in this option, and then may result in a location selection that is not ideal for the lower cost or wells in the higher capacity well fields. So build new 1.5 MGD facility phased to 3. Again, that's probably the second ultimate lowest cost facility for when you talk 20-year life cycle options. There's some flexibility in the placement location, reduce the initial cost versus a full capacity build out. So it's basically lower than building the 3 MGD. The cons: high upfront cost to finance for current population. It's still expensive. You're building a new facility on a new site. And so land availability is also critical to that option. That's pretty key that you have sites available and picked out and selected, and that's one of the elements of risk on building new, and may result in a location selection that is not ideal for long term, because the need is soon. You'd have to really move forward and picking a site sooner than later. Construct temporary expansion. We looked at that. Some small treatment skids. Brian's very effectively helped to bridge your capacity limitations right now with some smaller treatment units. And so the idea is, all right, can we go bigger on that? We looked at that, and it's advantageous for the short term. It's lower cost, allows population to grow prior to larger investment. Higher long-term cost, mainly because at some point you're going to be replacing that capacity and replacing those units, and you still have to get into land acquisition for well fields under that alternative for building a brick and mortar facility with additional treatment units. And it may result in well drilling in non-ideal locations, or trying to get those wells out west. And if you build it, it'd probably have to be built on land that's available, and then the wells might not be dropped where we'd like them long term. So it's a little hard to plan versus a long-term expansion of a permanent water treatment facility. Very good method to expand your capacity as you're nearing your limits. It's worked really well. And that was compared against some of the permanent solutions. So, last one was expanded the existing facility in 2022. That's lowest initial build-out cost, and so it is cheaper than building a new facility. It builds permanent capacity on land owned by the city, so it does take care of the land availability issue as far as timing and schedule risk and such. It allows, it's given capacity increases are permanent. The next water treatment facility may be smaller. It may offer the opportunity to revisit what the ultimate needs are for the city based on your actual observed growth over the next 10 years. So it gives you an opportunity to revisit your growth assumptions in 10 years or however long it takes to about double your capacity or double your population for the city. Well supply locations are limited. That is a drawback to this alternative that was factored in. It is more costly for the plumbing that needs to go in the ground in order to get wells to the site, and so that was a drawback that had to get factored into the costs. Space in the existing site is limited, so I mean there's a fixed footprint there. We feel it'll work, but it is basically kind of shoehorned in with the existing property limits that you have there. Changes to the facility will occur in a residential neighborhoods. So, of course, change is generally bad when people are looking around seeing something that they weren't looking at before. So we're not saying that it's always going to be favorable, but it is city property and an existing site that matches the uses. So here's how the costs play out here. What you'll have to really get your head around is the 2022 costs versus the life cycle cost. That's a bit different. You actually, the initial build-out costs are really what does it take to get your capacity as necessary in 2022. And then a life cycle cost is if you were to factor in, the replacements or additional expansions and everything that would happen in order to get up to the 15,000, which is in your comp plan, what would that life cycle cost look like? So the recommendations and review of options considered really that we weighed out initial project costs, the 20-year life cycle cost. Again, that's the cost of water treatment over a 20-year life cycle. 20-year growth planning, expandability. How does this line up with future development and flexibility to maybe acquire land by opportunity versus acquire land by need? Schedule, permitting, and risk. We do feel it's significant to act at this point. It's on a reasonable schedule, reasonable timeline, but we do feel it's significant to act. Trying to acquire land at this point does add some risk to the equation, and it would. We'll just simply say adds risk to the delivery process. Preserves lower cost, high capacity well field potential. This is important that obviously less wells is cheaper. And so we want to preserve that opportunity to build wells in a well field that's going to maybe result in half the well count as opposed to location where we're going to have 6 wells versus 3. So how do those considerations factor into the recommendation? This is how it played out. We looked at the preserve's ability to potentially build a facility over to the west, because eventually you're going to have to get up to that 3 MGD. So eventually there would be a new facility, just in accordance with even plans going back to 2010. There would eventually be a need for a second facility over to the west. So the preserves the high capacity well field was one ranking. Schedule, permitting, and risk, which is delivery schedule. Is there any risk of not being able to get this facility online in time? It's ranked by that. 20-year growth planning and expandability. There's the flexibility to obtain land by opportunity as opposed to need. 20-year life cycle cost is just really looking at the overall replacement of elements, different incremental expansion costs and when they would happen and such. Ultimately, it's a 20-year life cycle is what I'd say your net cost of any of these options over the planning period. And then there's the initial project cost, how these rank by your upfront cost. So ultimately, what it led to was expansion of the existing treatment facility looked to be the best fit for the city at this point. And that is driving the recommendation based on these considerations. So the ultimate recommendation is increase the water treatment facility by 1.5 million gallons per day, expand the concrete filter design with a new addition. The only reason I note that is because, as I said, in many cases you evaluate many different treatment types. There's various ways to treat the water, and in this case, you've already got a design that's well functioning, and this would be an expansion of that type of treatment. Construct 2 new wells and connect existing well number 4 to the existing facility. I'll show you what that looks like in a second. And continue to plan for a new water treatment facility to the northwest. As growth occurs in the northwest search area, secure land by opportunity. We strongly recommend that could be a driving need, because the need for that to the west is fairly proven. It's going to be a need eventually. And so as opportunity presents itself, we feel that's a very significant planning step to obtain this land when the opportunity presents itself with development or other maybe occurrences, land for sale, things to that nature, preferably near the high capacity well fields. Rationale for the recommendation was expanding the existing facilities, the lowest cost permanent build-out alternative. Option maintains flexibility to secure the most desirable location for another water treatment facility, and maintains the potential to basically developed near the high-capacity well field to the west. Expanding the existing facility will be permanent capacity. By that, we mean 40-plus year, and that just depends on, maintenance. These facilities are 40, 50, 60 years. You keep maintaining them. You eventually have to put more money into them to keep them functioning, but we consider it to be permanent when you start talking 40-plus years. Construction can occur on land owned by the city, which is a very, very significant benefit here, without acquisition efforts on a firm schedule, which can result in schedule and cost risk. So wells and raw water line, if you're looking, let's see, I can't point up there, but you know the area well enough here that you can see that's up by 212 and crossing JCP. Blue line is the new raw water line that would have to go in preparation for bringing raw water to the water treatment facility. And a couple of wells, we believe we've got pretty good locations sited on that. But this would be a couple of wells and your raw water line. Yeah. Yeah, north of 212, a little bit south. It's kind of encompasses a little bit north, or largely north, but a little south, but it is to the west. Yes. So some just graphics, just to kind of show you what you have for the existing site. So here's basically just to get you oriented on what you have out there for property, existing building, and here's a boring graphic of a schematic of what the expansion might look like conceptually, but Brian would be digging into that and making comments, and so this would be changing, and we'll be working with his team on what the proper layout would be. So that'll set final footprint. This is fairly conceptual, but it's basically to verify that we feel it'll fit for the capacity needed on the property that's available. And so here's a couple of visuals about what that would actually look like on the site. Again, this is conceptual. We haven't picked the roof color out or brick for you, but you still have an opportunity to do that in the future. But that's matching everything out there. This is about the size of the footprint on the site. And here's kind of a before and after visual. This is top is obviously your existing, and there's the proposed building addition. Those trees would probably get hit, and we'd probably have to put something else back in there. But for now, we're just saying, all right, there'll be trees back there at some point, and all those things are discussions that would happen in the plan development process. So next steps in implementation, here's a budget summary. You've seen a little bit about this in some of the financial plans that have been presented separately, but there's drilled new wells, $5 and $6 million to drill those wells. It's already been approved as an established need for water supply. Expand the existing facility and water supply expansion infrastructure. These are budgeted numbers that we've vetted based on past facilities of a similar size, current construction pricing data that we have based on current inflation rates and such. So we've taken past data and said, all right, for this amount of square footage, this capacity, this is about what we feel this this expansion should cost. And we feel it's appropriate budget number. Raw water lines to the wells and to the site. Again, that was one of the drawbacks to expanding the existing site versus going to the west. Is there's more on raw water lines and the well costs, but well controls, pumps, that's all has to go into the whole deal. We consider it a system expansion. You need the water running to the treatment, and then you need the treatment itself. Preliminary project budget is $11 million on top of the $1 million that's already been approved. And that was down from the 14 of the other alternative that you've seen previously. So schedule summary, this would be the raw water lines and wells. Basically, just to skip through it in short order, acquire land for wells. There is one well that it looks like we're going to need to make sure that we get some easements worked out. That would be right now. We're be looking at trying to get that going in the near future, next couple of months, trying to work through those processes. Ultimately, bidding this summer. Of course, you'd see all that again, and then construction August through May of 2021. Timing is somewhat flexible on that, but ultimately we're trying to get the wells in September because they take a little while to get active. So the big one, this is the driver, the critical path schedule for sure, is the water treatment facility expansion itself. Preliminary layout and final design, which is really the question at hand in front of you. That would be February through August. That's what we're seeking authorization to proceed with. The permitting would be concurrent with that. Council approves plans. You'd see this again. Well, probably some updates prior to that, but again, for sure, in August. Estimated bid date of September. Award contract October, and there's the big one that drives schedule. To try and open this summer of 2022, you have 18 months of construction. So it's a pretty lengthy duration to actually go from bid date to opening, and so 18 months would get you to the summer of 2022 as recommended, and so that is a very, very aggressive delivery schedule. I mean, we really have to stay on track for this, and so that is where we stand today. So the next steps that are in front of you at the moment are authorization to complete plans and specifications. That is what we are seeking from you tonight. And then February design, bid, construct per schedule outlined. So that's the next steps that I've outlined in the schedule. But the number one is the January authorization to proceed into plans, specifications, and prepare for bids in August. So if there's any questions that I neglected to pause on, I will open it up to you right now.
Right. That was your speediest presentation ever, I think.
I was in speed mode here tonight.
Yeah.
I was going to try and get through the topics, and
I'll
let you ask questions as long as
right.
you'd like.
Thank you, Dan.
Any questions?
I have two questions.
Go ahead.
Dan, I've had the opportunity to have a tour of the current water treatment, but I don't remember. Is it really noisy? Like, do you see an impact to residents if we expand and have that other building?
Noise is not one of the issues that we've typically had, but so I would say no, but Brian's welcome to take that on if he's had those comments before.
I think when it comes to the noise, I think the only thing that we did talk about a little bit is the standby generator that's there. So when we do have a power failure, the generator starts up. So one of the things is generator that we have there currently was a used one, and it is a louder one. So one of the things we have talked about is making sure that we get the right size generator in there with the right sound enclosures to help minimize that noise. But otherwise, it's pretty quiet there.
But that's only during a power
That's a
outage.
power
I mean,
outage,
there's
yeah.
no other reason to start that generator up, is there?
We do, yes, we do testing it every month.
Okay.
So we do start it up during the day and run it, even when we don't have a power outage. But it's louder. But you're exactly right. It's typically when we have a power outage or there's an emergency.
If you were going to test it, how long would it be on during the day?
We typically run it for a couple hours
Okay,
because
so it is
we
running.
start it up, warm it up, transfer power, let it run, then we go through cool down period.
Okay.
Then my other question was, is there a point in the project or like phase 2 where you have a milestone where you realize, oh, we need to increase the city staff? Like, is it something that down the road, which would come from a different budget, we would need to add to the team? I guess, or is this just
Are you asking,
very
does this,
automated?
are you asking,
Like what, like
does this require additional staffing to
Yes.
maintain it? Is that?
Yeah, does
your-
it require additional staffing to maintain it at the end of phase 1 or phase 2?
I'm just going to let you take that one, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, based on what there is going to be more to take care of, more to operate, and more to manage. As we go through the process, we'll look at ways to, to bring technology into it to minimize that. But that'll be something that we'll have to kind of work through as we're designing the project and looking at what that workload is going to bring on. Hopefully that answers it.
And we try and automate. I mean, that's part of the process. So we say, is it worth it to add this control system so that you can operate it by phone?
Yeah.
There's a lot of things. You can do a lot with technology.
And Brian, you can feel free to disagree, but the plant on its own wouldn't require like one full-time person. It would be the plant and the multitude of other things that the city is experiencing that would require, or not require, but would lead to a discussion about bringing on a person. But the plant on its own wouldn't need like one full FTE to like operate the plant. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, based on from what we have currently, yeah, you're exactly right.
Thanks, those were my questions.
Can you go back 2 pages? Thank you. That's a pretty aggressive schedule.
Yes, it is. We've done it, and we feel we can do it, but we do have to. We've got to hit certain checkpoints and just keep moving. So yeah, it's.
There's a lot of concrete to be poured.
Well, the construction we feel is reasonable. We're just trying to get it to the point of starting construction's pretty quick.
Okay.
I'd say the construction's pretty reasonable. 18 months is what we typically use for build out. But what we're trying to do is get it started before winter time, so that they can get some concrete work done before it freeze up and such. And so that's the big trigger, is trying to get that fall window.
You want to go back 1 more page, please? My other question was, when would the wells be drilled? And it's September to May. Okay.
Okay.
The questions that I had is kind of going back to the, kind of piggybacking on Glenn's comments about the construction schedule. You know, we just went through a construction project here and learned that it's very easy for there to be delays in a construction schedule. Is the 18-month window realistic, or is it 24 months if you have issues with the elevator people? I do understand there's no elevator in this building.
I would say we would put probably 14 to 16 months as a highly aggressive schedule. 18 months we feel is reasonable, and you know, we write the contracts such to enforce completion. I mean, there can be damages associated with it. You know, we have to weigh that out versus how much we feel that the contractor might bid risk into their delivery schedule. But I mean, in most of their contracts, we would have had damages associated with their delivery. Okay. And so at this point, I would say, of course, we always get curveballs. We dig up, dinosaur bones in our expansion area, and all of a sudden, our schedule went out the window. But
we found them in the river.
And we have run into those types of situations where all of a sudden back to the drawing board on timing. But yeah, I mean we feel it's certainly realistic. But that is one of the reasons why we want to start in the fall, to try and get that concrete poured.
And then you mentioned that the trees might be a casualty of this project. Are those on city's property, or are those on
city's property? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. The final thing, and I think you all have probably heard me say this before, but the urgency with which you speak of this project leaves no question in my mind of how important it is, and that we continue to really get going on this. So I'm completely supportive of moving forward.
I only had one question. I assume we need to do a bond for this. What would be the timing for that in the schedule?
I would say to be determined.
When would it be around? Like, which of these bullet points?
Well, so the goal, without kind of digging into the current status of funds or having those in front of me, would be to try to delay the bond issuance to the spring of 21, so that we can do the same issuance for Jonathan Carver Parkway and the water treatment plant.
Okay.
So it'll be based on, we'll connect with Paul Steinman at Baker Tilly, or formerly, Springstead, and connect with Steve McDonald and get an assessment of, do we have enough cash in our water fund to fund the first couple of payments as we work over the winter, because it'll be in our best interest to do the whole issuance at once rather than doing one in the fall and one in the spring for Jonathan Carver Parkway. Because it'd be preferable not to bond this fall for Jonathan Carver Parkway, because then you're paying the capitalized interest on that. So we'll push for spring, and then I would also, just to go back just a bit, I'll ask Dan and Brian to revise the construction schedule when they bring it to you for bid, because there's always once you accept the bid, then there's a certain amount of contract approval that the city attorney and the engineer go through, and just based on past practice, especially with this building, when we go through that, that takes time, and then there's an amount of confusion or miscommunication that exists where we've started and said, well, we'll be done by, or we're gonna start construction in October, but then it really starts in November. And so I get it in terms of Brian and Dan, where they want to represent to the council how quickly we want to go, but then there's another level of communication of, as we're communicating our construction schedule to residents, we're better off to say what we're planning for the worst case scenario rather than going back and saying we're 3 months behind schedule. We really want to take a realistic look at what it's going to take, planning for some curveballs because they inevitably happen. But I don't think there's a benefit for planning for the best and then coming back and saying, well, we've hit curveballs that we knew were going to come eventually. So we'll try to right size that schedule, even though we want it to be done as quickly as possible.
I'll make a motion
Oh,
to.
I'm sorry, Lori, I still had something. Sorry. I haven't gone yet. My comments are pretty short and easy. I like the fact that we are using property that we already own. I appreciate the cost savings and the time savings of not having to go out and try and acquire property, an additional cost. This is a little bit detailed when we get too detailed for something that we are looking at right now, but for the proposed rendering, I like that it is similar to the building that's there now. We do have neighbors that are right on the other side of those trees. So it's not that, so they will be having something next to them that is similar to what is there now with those trees if they are being removed. I think it's important to have something of that general size replaced there. I think it's a nice buffer for something that is going in next to that other property. So
Sure.
That's my only comments I have.
Oh, that's good. All right, thanks.
Just one more thing that I thought of. I too do appreciate the cost savings with being able to put this on land that we already own, but I also appreciate the priority of trying to always kind of keep our eyes open for land of opportunity for the next phase of this versus land of necessity. So keeping that in the back of our minds, even though this is the number one priority at this point, I think is important. So I appreciate you pointing that out. Thank you. With that,
Any other questions or discussion? I'll make a motion to authorize preparation of plans and specifications for the water system expansion projects.
I'll second that.
we have a motion by Councilmember Sayer and a second by Councilmember Henry. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right. Oh my gosh, 9.4 Green Step Cities. Ms. Smith.
Oops, I keep forgetting to back out and then reopen. I'm still trying to scroll.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight we are discussing Green Step Cities, which we've talked about at a couple of work sessions previously. So a little bit of detail about what the program is. It's a voluntary self-paced program that's free to join. It offers technical assistance and recognition. It allows for continuous improvement framework, and there are 170 possible actions grouped with 29 best practices. So largely, Green Step Cities is a city-led challenge to add to quality of life and sustainability measures for a community. So thinking about cities that have joined, also tribal nations, so there's over 120 participants over the state of Minnesota. You can see a pretty large cluster over the metro area, so communities surrounding us like Victoria, Shakopee, Chanhassen are all involved with the Green Step Cities program. So it does focus on actions, but it is voluntary. So at no point are we forced into doing certain actions. It's all up to us, self-paced. We get to decide what we do, what we don't do. So the discussion that we're having tonight, there are 5 different levels or steps for recognition. So step 1 is simply to join the program or pass a resolution saying the city of Carver is entering into the Green Step Cities program. After that, the steps become a little bit more arduous. There are some things you need to complete. Something to note, the city of Carver is a B city based on our population and the amount of staff that we have. So if you're looking through the Green Step Cities program, it's A, B, and C. A, largely are small communities. C, are the large cities that have, obviously, the higher population, additional city buildings, city staff. So tonight we are just considering step 1, so joining the program, passing the resolution. So thinking through the other 6 best practices that we would need to do to complete step 2, which is the step above just joining, I combed through the program and found a couple that applied. So one of the best practices is to apply mixed uses. So one of the best practices that would earn us the best practice to get us to 1 best practice, we need 6 total, so 5 remaining, would be to locate a school that has at least 2 of the following attributes. So adjacent to an existing employment or residential center, Carver Elementary checks that box. Designed to facilitate and encourage access by walking and biking, Carver Elementary checks that box. And 3, accessible by regular transit service, checks that box. So already we have 1 best practice done. It's something that we did inherently in the planning work that we did, didn't require anything additional from staff. An additional is best practice number 18, which is parks and trails, where 2 actions would be required to get the point for the best practice. So plan and budget for a network of parks, green spaces, water features, and trails for areas where new development is planned. Parks Master Plan checks that box. And create parkland that maximizes pollinator and monarch safe habitat. That was a mission of the Parks Commission through the Parks Master Plan, was to facilitate areas that are reserved for pollinator and monarch safe habitat. So again, we're 2 of 6 to get to step 2. So that was just a quick comb through. I suspect we're doing several other things that they list as best practices. So tonight's review and potential next steps. There's a resolution in the packet that would enter us into the program at the step 1 recognition. Step 2, I would say, would be to determine the low-hanging fruit. So similar to what I just did, run through what we're doing right now, see what boxes we can check right away. Just the 2 of the 6, if we're pretty close on a couple, I think we're really close to step 2 for the B City, so the 6 best practices. And then next steps beyond that would be periodic updates to the City Council on the programs and actions that we've either been able to take just by applying the framework or something that we did pretty easily. Moving forward, we would discuss large-scale efforts and impacts should we choose to move forward, continuing through the STEP program. So again, tonight is just step 1, recognition, entering into the program with a resolution. I'll open it up for comments, questions, discussion.
Comments, questions?
I have
Christy?
some comments and some questions. So I know that we had the person from this program come to our last work session. She, was very informative on a lot of different things in the program. I started reading, I went to the website and I started reading about the program a little bit more. So I have a couple of concerns that came up when I was looking through this. First, before I start, I want to say thank you to Joy for bringing this to our attention. I think the City of Carver being environmental stewards of in whatever fashion is important. However, when I'm looking more into this program, I'm not sure that this program may be the right one for us. So when I'm looking at it, it says that on their website it's going to save us money. From what I've seen, it doesn't necessarily identify in what ways it's going to save us money. I did ask, I'm sorry, I forgot her name. But Diana, when she came. There's special opportunities. It mentions a lot of special opportunities that are available to us, and funding and grant support. And I asked about grants, and yet she didn't have any necessarily answers of how to apply or what grants might be out there. So I felt that if that is something that is on the site that they're going to tout to us, that there would be a little bit more information, or at least the representative might have some examples, and I couldn't find any examples. Also, when we're looking at steps 4 and 5, actually I'm going to back up one. I had asked her, if you were to begin the program and then you get to a certain point and you stop, then what happens? How long before you're out or inactive or whatever it might be? And she said 3 years was the point, and then in year 4 they have discussions with the city. If the city does not move forward in the steps, then they become truly inactive. So as I was looking through, I went to their metrics 4 and 5, and I will keep it brief because obviously there's a lot of information on here. But when you're looking at, it says, in order to receive step 4 and 5 recognition, cities will record all of the core metrics. Once you get to 4 and 5, what I'm finding, these core metrics are things that do cost us money, that it's something we do have to make an investment in. One, if we look at number 14, I know you don't have this in front of you, but number 14 is the renewable energy. And when you get down to the bottom where it says step 5 metric targets, it says the state of Minnesota, as part of the Next Generation Energy Act, has a goal of generating 25% of electricity used in 2025 from renewable resources. In addition, the state has set a solar standard for achieving an additional 1.5% of electric energy. Generation from solar, I feel like you rent, generation from solar energy systems by 2020 and by 10% by 2030. So this is a core one. So we would have to fulfill this core at whatever cost it might be in order to stay in this program. The same is for the stormwater, since we're talking about so much water. Again, their metrics, this one's quite long, so I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but there's a credit system and an ordinance package that will allow for increased flexibility and state-approved streamlined approach to regulatory programs for developers and communities. So this also falls under a core that we have to complete in order to be part of this program at step 4 and 5 to continue. Now, while I really like the idea of joining in steps 1 and 2 and 3, when we start to get to where these core ones are mandated in order to stay in the program, I have trouble with starting into a program that we can't know that we're going to finish. So we can join if we say, okay, we don't want these, we can't afford these core ones, it doesn't match whatever is happening right now. We started a program that then gets basically taken away from us, and we get put on inactive or deleted status. I don't know what happens necessarily after 4 years. So while I like the initial steps of this, I have a hard time committing ourselves to something that we don't know for sure we can afford or do, and then have to basically be dropped from the program at a later date anyways. That's all I have for now. Thanks.
So can I just follow up on those?
Yes.
So what I like about this is it's voluntary, and we don't have to complete steps 4 and 5. We can stay at 3, and I think you can go on their website. Oops, I just got
Right, but for 3 years, right?
It's my understanding, and I don't know, Erin, if you can correct me, but I think just as long as that communication is taking place, you can stay at 3 steps into, you could, God, maybe stay into step 1 into perpetuity, you know, just as long as that communication is taking place and that there's, you know, regular check-ins. Am I wrong?
No, that's correct. So one of the steps, or one of the best practices for step 2 is something called B3 benchmarking, where we would benchmark all city buildings just to get a clear picture of what our buildings look like energy-wise. And if we were to keep up with that benchmarking, we would stay active in the program. So there's not, after 3 years, you don't have to jump to a new step. You just need to keep your information updated, show that you're still invested in the program to some degree of keeping things updated, continuing to at least think about it, consider the project. So it's not
Could
after.
you repeat the very beginning of that, of what is required?
So it's called B3 benchmarking. So you go through all of your city buildings and you benchmark their energy usage. So should we get to step 2 and we keep up that B3 program, we're not going to fall inactive because we're not reaching step 3.
So, and just looking at this website, it's off of the Green Step Cities. Aiken has been a step 1 city since 2016. So has Chisholm. Cologne has been a step 1 city since 2015. Step 3, Apple Valley has remained there since 2015, so has Bemidji.
Mayor is step 1 since 15.
Yes, I did not
Right.
make it down to the M's.
But yeah, I mean, you know, I
So
don't,
what's the
I
game?
don't see a lot of cities. I mean, if I look at the cities that are going beyond step 1 and step 2 and even 3, they're large cities. There's the C category.
What defines a C population city? What's the population breakdown?
Oh, I'm sure.
It's high. We're not.
High's
Carver
not
will,
the answer.
Carver will not hit it with our 2040 projection.
So it's probably
15,000?
35,000, 40,000, 50,000 people? Probably?
We don't know that answer.
We can probably find it on the website.
What are you getting at, Glenn? We can.
That was my first question. Free to join is one thing. What's it cost for the upkeep and maintenance all the way throughout? Because when I go through the 29 best practices, and what are they? 9 of them are required, and the required actions, I count 14 of them in here that are pretty much required.
Wait, can we just so that we're speaking in fact, there are no required actions. It's up to us. It's completely up to us as to which ones we choose.
Correct.
Okay.
And except for when you enter into that step.
Right.
Because at that step.
But at the level that we're speaking.
So is our intent then to start this, but then to stay at a level
To say
and
we
not
could be
progress?
green?
I'm just asking.
So,
what
I mean,
you're envisioning maybe.
what I look at when I look at joining Green Step cities is what I hear from residents. My perception is that our residents are looking for a way to know that our city is doing something about sustainability, right? And this gives us a framework to explain it, right? Because this is a Minnesota program. There's plenty of other cities in it. There are steps. You can describe where we are on our path and what we've done. So it is a nice framework to explain that to our residents so that they could compare us. I mean, if somebody is considering, if sustainability is really important to a resident and they're considering a place to live, this is a place they can rank cities, right, feasibly. So I like that from that aspect. I also like that this is free, voluntary. We get to determine what we want to do. And there are best practices here that we can leverage. We're not reinventing the wheel.
So speaking
Those
of
are all the
reinventing
things
the
I
wheel,
like.
yeah. So because these steps and this information is out there,
yes.
What I'm wondering is, like I said, I'm not against some of these environmental stewardship practices. That is not it at
Right.
all. I want to consider a different way. Is it something? Excuse me. Is it something that the city of Carver can build themselves after this to see, but towards what's really specific to our city, rather if we didn't join this program and we chose to maybe have something put in place where we had some of our own environmental goals that really fit us, since the information's there. It's another alternative.
I don't know.
So just weighing in, I think that's definitely an option. I think we need to consider what the costs are with that and coming up with our own, there's an article in last week's Chaska Herald.
Yep.
Last week or the week before that.
In the Chaska Herald?
No, I wasn't sure if it was the week before or the week or last week's, but there was an article in the Chaska Herald.
Okay.
About how Chaska is completing these steps independently of any formulated
But they haven't
system.
joined yet.
I'm still talking. You're correct. They haven't joined the Green Step City. They're kind of going their own way. There are definitely requirements. They're actually, I think I read and I just browsed the article, that they're doing really well in the renewable energy category, that you had some concerns about the cost associated with that. In my mind, I worry that that's more work and more staff time than joining a group that would be there to assist us with this process. Glenn?
Oh, when I go through and look at the best practices, there are many of them that somewhere, not this council, but 10 years from now, 15 years from now, people will probably have to take action of. And what is that cost going to be? In here with the, let's go to battery-operated cars, battery-operated government, our city vehicles. Are they going to be green vehicles with electric trucks and electric cars? That's a huge expense. Huge expense.
Why do you say that we're going to have to do something in a future council? You use the word have to.
Sooner or later, when we start making our best practices and we start checking our boxes, we will probably have to, in order to stay joined with them and not dormant or anything like that, we'll have to check a box here and there. At what cost is that? When I look in here and I see the cost of buildings and changing people's private buildings to greener options, that's a cost to them. Why should we have to mandate what they need to do to their buildings? To residences, you need to put in LED bulbs. You have to. When I go through...
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but everything I've heard about this is it's voluntary. There's no have to. We don't have to do anything to stay in the program. Aaron just described that as long as we continue to maintain and invest, and
invest what?
In considering actions. I don't know what the actual language is, but I mean, it's up for the city council to decide what we want to participate in with this program. It's going to be our decision to do that. Absolutely. I think we have full control over our participation in this program.
There's no, I mean, so when I read this too, there's $1,000 a year. Do we receive $1,000 a year from being in this program? I will look at the same time, but I thought it was on the very homepage, or it was something
I saw
about
that
it.
too. It was a grant from the league, I think.
Yeah, I'm not saying that that makes it worth it or not worth it. I'm just asking if that might be the only thing, because if it's voluntary and we stay in until we feel like even if we feel like we've gotten everything out of the program we can, and we don't want to go to best practices 4, and let's say they change their things, well, either you make it to 4 or you're out. I mean, take your sign back, I guess, right?
Right. I mean, there'll probably be many other cities in that same position, right?
Right.
Based upon where some of these cities have been for many years.
So I found your $1,000. It's in the FAQs that was attached or linked to Aaron's document. It's in the second kind of subgroup of what recognition is there for a Green Step City. The second bullet is an annual $1,000 LMC/GSC Sustainable City Award. Second.
Okay, show me where you're saying. Okay.
So for me, I appreciate your concerns of a council 10 years down the road. This is completely voluntary. We are adopting a resolution authorizing the city we're considering adopting a resolution to allow the city to participate. But this is something that we can stop or change our minds on in 6 days, 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years if we decide that it no longer fits our needs or if our experience isn't what it's been built to be, as can future councils.
Aaron, when I received an email, I'm sure others on the council received an email, and it stated City of Plymouth and their decision on it. So when I was reading through that, I know that one of the City of Plymouth's concerns was having to give some of that metric and data to this program. Do you see any concerns with, if we were to make it to step 4, why the City of Plymouth? I know you're kind of speaking for another city, but I guess I'm not sure as to why the City of Plymouth was so worried about information that I thought maybe, hi Larry Harris, that might be public knowledge anyways?
I can't speak to that.
Nothing. Okay.
Yes.
I did find the answer to the ABC question of the city. It's not based upon population. It's based upon 11 questions that have to do with how many public buildings do you have, how many city staff do you have different departments within your city, do you have a fixed route transit service, are you served by a centralized wastewater treatment facility, Do you have a drinking water treatment facility? So it kind of has, are you in a metropolitan area? It's those kinds of questions versus population. But the answers to these questions seem to be, if you were a larger city, you would be saying yes to a lot of these things or having higher numbers.
All right.
Anyway.
What is a required best practice and what is a required action? Required.
So one of the required ones is to adopt a comprehensive plan, which we do as part of the 7 metro area.
Correct. So when I go through and I get down to step 29, and it's climate adaptation and community resilience, and it's a required best practice.
So to get the point for that best practice, that one is required. So 29 is not required across the board. To get that point, you have to have that plan.
You have to have that what plan?
Whatever 29 was.
The climate adaptation and community resilience.
Yep, so we could say we're not interested in number 29.
But how do we know 10 years from now we're not going to have people up here saying, oh, we got to be in part of the 29, we have to have it?
We might. That could happen.
Well, so I go down to the next number 1, which is a required action, and it's prepare to maintain public health and safety during extreme weather events and climate change related events, while also taking a preventative approach to reduce risk for community members. I want anybody in this room, and Mike, you're included, to tell me what a climate change event is. Anybody? Can't answer it. There's so much more stuff that, if I pick through this, it's so vague. This is nothing but feel-good legislation that we can check off and say, hey, we're a green city. When are we getting our signs? To me, it's nothing more than just feel good. Can't we just move on with it? We can check most of these boxes because we've done it with the city hall and a lot of stuff. But the reality of it is, sooner or later, there will be a cost to this city that I don't feel I want to put on anybody, especially the citizens. I know it's voluntary. It doesn't cost us anything to get in, but sooner or later when we're starting to tell people how they can build their buildings, what they can and can't put in their buildings for mechanical, electrical, lighting, and all that stuff, that's over the top to me. I don't think that a lot of this stuff in here, sooner or later, it's going to come back to bite people that want to move in here and say, well, let's just look at one thing. Well, why we're not getting a car wash at Quick Trip, because we have a regulation that we have to have X amount of renewable water. They couldn't check that box, so they're not bringing it in. It's just legislation that I don't want to put on anybody to stop them from coming here and moving forward in Carver. But then again, I'm just one vote.
So just to, again, keep the discussion within the parameters of fact-based, our ordinance is for recycled water, not renewable water. And I think that may have been something that you worked on in the council when Fleet Farm came in.
That was implemented about 2 months before I was on council the first time.
Fair enough. Lori?
I just have, my comment is I support the program more because I feel like we have processes in place to make decisions as we go through the steps, whether it be just from step 1 to 2 and, and we can think of so many hypotheticals on the length of time. But the part that we have processes in place where if there was anything in the 2019 budget or that we wanted to do and it wasn't in the budget, we wouldn't be able to. Or if there's something over $20,000, as the community development director, Aaron would have to come in front of us and ask. So yes, if there is something down the road that maybe does align with how we want to be represented as a green step city, that we would make an investment, that would still come in front of us if it to be in the budget or if it was over that certain threshold. So that's where I feel comfortable in starting it. I don't know how long we'll stay in it. Maybe it'll be a forever thing. Maybe it'll be short term, but this just gets us started. It's my understanding too that some individuals, when they're looking for their future home, or maybe it's a developer or business, that's part of their criteria as far as, you know, what we're calling here a green city. But to be able to have a reputable way to measure what we're doing and what we've done, for some individuals, businesses, that is important. That's something that's on their list of things to check off. So for those reasons, I support it. If there's no other discussion or questions, I'm ready to make a motion.
Just want to make, so Glenn, I recognize your concerns about the cost, and I appreciate that, and I want to be really clear that listen, we're talking water treatment plant, we're talking street improvements. I am not looking to spend excess money in any other categories, but I think that we can do this really economically for little to no cost. As Erin gave examples, 2 things that we're already doing that I think she just kind of skimmed the surface.
We can check right 6
went
boxes.
through these. Exactly. So that makes us a step 2 city for
So we can get our
0
signs.
cost. So put it right in front of your
And we
house.
can be
Glenn.
green.
Right. Okay, Christy.
Okay, now where was I? Okay, so I guess moving forward with this, obviously we can only make decisions for the council that's here right now. We can never make a future council decision. It is after 10 o'clock. If we go into this right now saying, okay, maybe we only make it to step 3 and we don't have any penalties coming out of this. Again, maybe it's just take your sign back if we decide someday we don't want to do it. And Erin, thank you. Some of your explanations were helpful as into what is required and where that we can stay. Because my concern was that I really didn't want to start a program knowing that we were going to dump out of it in a couple years, because that seems like a lot of work for nothing. But seeing some of these years against these cities here who have been in it and they're hitting year 5 and they're still at step 2, year 6 still at step 2, I feel more comfortable with it. So I guess I have all the information that I need, but thanks everybody for filling in those blanks for me. And you over here. Point all the way around. Sorry. My back to you, Brandon. Sorry about that.
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 104-20, authorizing the City of Carver to participate in the Minnesota Green Step Cities program.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Councilmember Sayre and a second by Councilmember McKnight. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
So we need a roll call vote?
Councilmember Henry.
Nay.
Councilmember Mock.
Aye.
Councilmember Sayre.
Aye.
Councilmember McKnight.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. All right, motion carries.
Mayor, Council, could I just add one thing? Just as an expectation piece, one of the things that, if capital IF, if we get to the point where we are looking at something that would be, what I'd say, an upfront cost to try to check one of the boxes for the initiatives, within our budget process, I'll highlight this is a Green Step City initiative, so that you can have complete confidence that there's nothing being done irrelevant of what the dollar amount is, that's being done to check a box that it's of cost, at least until we get our feet wet with understanding what this means. So if it's $500 or $1,000, something we're going to do in 2021, we'll highlight and say, this is a Green Step City initiative. And I don't know all the pieces that are in there, but I just wanted to add some security and for you and how we're going to approach this.
Also, if there are to be any ordinance or fee-related schedules type of thing, those would always, of course, come to the council, right? And you guys can highlight to us, hey, the reason we're making these changes is because of a Green Step City best practice or something like that, so we can be really cognizant of it as well. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Brent. Communications? Joy?
I have nothing. I missed the business council meeting. No updates.
Okay. Let's see. For me, there's a community leaders meeting on January 10th. That's the one that the school district convenes with the mayors and city managers or city administrators and all four of the communities in the school district. They gave us a little bit of an update with the referendum failing. They're continuing to kind of go down the path of where they're going to make cuts, and they have specific dollar amounts and targets that they're going to be making, but no final decisions have been made yet. Regional Council of Mayors was on January 13th. That's the Urban Land Institute group that I'm part of, and that was kind of a climate sustainability theme for this month's meeting. There's always a theme. They had the MPCA Commissioner Laura Bishop there. There was someone from Excel Energy that was talking about their carbon vision. Chamber meet and greet was at Carver Insurance on January 14th. Let's see, we had the Southwest Transit Board meeting on the 15th where we talked about refining their strategic plan and kind of working into the direction that will carry us through the next couple of years. And then last Friday there was a Carver Business Alliance meeting, and that group continues to have a pretty strong attendance rate with folks showing up and providing their feedback and giving business updates. So that's a group that I'm not assigned to, but I know showing up too.
It's
So
a good one.
I love that group.
It's a good one.
I really do like that group. So.
We had an HPC meeting last week. We reviewed the sign for Casey's. They have that kind of old style sign. It's not lit where you take the numbers off and stick them back on. And so welcome to the century here. We're going to have a lit sign. So the HPC did approve it again. Lighted signs are not necessarily something that in the historic district are approved. However, because they felt that it is on the fringe of the district and Casey's itself in nature is not a historic building, that they felt really comfortable with having that changed out. So you'll see a lit sign at Casey's. They also have mentioned that they can adjust, not only can they adjust the pricing from inside, but the amount of light that it's giving off. So if we do get a complaint that it is too bright and it's disturbing somehow, they do have the capability to adjust that lighting down.
Nice.
The other big thing coming up is this Saturday is the Soggy Bottom Golf Tournament down at Riverside Park. It is from 11 to 2. It is our Lions medical fundraiser that we do every year. It looks like the weather, crossing fingers, is going to be very nice and warm. We do have a bonfire there. We have games, we have golf, we have food and beverages. So please stop on down. It goes to a good cause. You can also go on eventbrite.com, type in Soggy Bottom. You can donate there or you can buy tickets there as well. That's all I have.
I'll be golfing.
Great. I'll be working.
Planning Commission meeting was canceled this month, so I don't have anything there. But no, it's going to be a good event. Looking forward to it.
Brent? Nothing? All right. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mayor Johnson, a second by Councilmember Mock. Any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Good evening.